Have you ever sat awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, with your heart racing from thoughts you can't control? Maybe it was the loss of someone you loved. Maybe it was the pressure at work, the bills piling up, or the fear of not being enough. We live in a world that moves so fast, where every mistake feels permanent and every loss feels unbearable. But what if life was never meant to be held so tightly? What if the storm inside you is not a sign of weakness, but a gentle reminder of something deeper, that everything, no matter how heavy, will one day pass? The Buddha taught us about impermanence, anicca, that nothing stays the same, not even our suffering. And he taught us about mindfulness, learning to rest in the present moment, even when our hearts are restless. Tonight, let me share with you stories, simple, timeless Zen stories. Each one carries a seed of wisdom that can help us loosen our grip, let go of what hurts, and return to the quiet peace that has always lived within us. So, take a deep breath, let your body soften, and allow these stories to guide you gently back home, to yourself. Before we dive into these timeless Zen and Buddhist stories, take a moment to notice where you are. Feel the surface beneath you, the quiet around you, and the breath moving gently in and out. Imagine you are stepping into a peaceful temple at dusk. Lanterns glow softly, incense drifts in the air, and outside the window, the night sky stretches wide and calm. This is your sacred space for the next few hours, a space where nothing is demanded of you except to listen and rest. As the stories unfold, you may feel your shoulders ease, your breath deepen, and the weight of your day begin to fade. Each tale is like a gentle river current, carrying you closer to stillness, closer to yourself. Tonight, you don't have to chase answers or hold on to anything. Simply allow the words to wash over you. With every story, your body will relax further, your mind will soften, and your heart will remember the peace it has always known. So settle in, adjust your blanket, rest your head comfortably, and let go of the need to be anywhere else. Take one slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine the door to your inner sanctuary opening. The journey begins here. And our first story begins with a boat drifting quietly across a river. The empty boat. Have you ever noticed how quickly anger rises? It doesn't ask for permission. It floods the chest, tightens the throat, and fills the mind before we even know it. Imagine this. You're driving home late at night after a long shift. The road is crowded, headlights flashing in every direction. You're tired, hungry, and just want to reach home. Suddenly, a car swerves sharply into your lane without a signal. Your heart jumps. Your palms sweat against the steering wheel. Before you even think, the words explode inside. How reckless. They could have killed me. This flash of anger is familiar to many of us. In America, surveys show road rage incidents are so common that nearly 80% of drivers admit to it. For many, driving is no longer just a commute. It's a battlefield where anger waits to be triggered. But here's the question. Is it really about the other driver? Or is it about the story our mind creates in that moment? An ancient Zen story tells of a man rowing across a quiet river. In the distance, another boat drifted straight toward him. "Watch out!" he shouted. "Turn away!" But the boat kept moving closer. His frustration boiled into rage. "Are you blind? Move your boat!" Finally, the boats collided. The man stood, ready to unleash his fury, only to discover the boat was empty. There was no one inside. In that instant, the anger disappeared. There was no person to blame. The collision still happened, but the story in his head dissolved. The Buddha often taught that suffering is shaped not only by events themselves, but by the way our mind interprets those events. When the man thought another person was steering the boat, anger arose. "They are careless. They are attacking me. They should know better." The mind built a narrative, and anger was born. But when he saw the boat was empty, the story collapsed, and so did his fury. This is what Buddhism calls the illusion of self at the center of experience. We imagine everything is about me. Every accident, every inconvenience, every word, we take it all personally. But often, like the empty boat, events drift toward us without malice, simply carried by causes and conditions. The teaching here is profound. Most of our anger is not about what happens, but about the story we attach to what happens. Think again of the road. Another driver cuts you off. The first thought is, they disrespected me. They endangered me. But in truth, maybe they were rushing to the hospital. Maybe they were distracted by a crying baby in the back seat. Maybe they didn't even see you. The boat is empty. At work too, anger strikes quickly. A colleague sends a blunt email. You feel insulted, dismissed. Yet later, you learn they were typing quickly between meetings, or English wasn't their first language. No disrespect was intended. Again, the boat is empty, and at home, a partner forgets to call. A child leaves toys scattered across the floor. Instantly, the story rises. They don't care. They never listen. But maybe your partner's phone died. Maybe your child was lost in play. Once more, the boat is empty. Anger doesn't only appear on the road or in emails. It visits us in countless small ways. Picture this. You are waiting in line at the grocery store. The person ahead fumbles with their wallet, moving slowly. Your schedule is tight, your phone is buzzing, and frustration begins to rise. In your mind, the story is, they are inconsiderate. They are wasting my time. But if you look closer, maybe the person is elderly, their hands unsteady. Maybe they are simply having a difficult day. The boat is empty. Or think about scrolling through social media. Someone posts a comment that stings, maybe even feels like a personal attack. Your mind reacts instantly. They're targeting me. They want to humiliate me. But perhaps their comment wasn't directed at you. Perhaps they themselves were hurting and projecting pain outward. Again, the boat is empty. Even within families, anger appears. A teenager slams a door. A parent assumes they are disrespectful. They don't value me. But perhaps the child is struggling with feelings they cannot name, overwhelmed by the changes of growing up. Once more, the boat is empty. Why does anger catch us so easily? Because the mind is quick to make three mistakes. Assuming intention. We believe that others act with the purpose of hurting us, when in truth, most people are simply caught in their own storms, clinging to anger as strength. Many believe that showing anger proves power, but in reality, anger clouds clarity. It burns the one who carries it more than the one it targets, carrying the story long after it ends. Even when the moment has passed, we replay it in our minds, nourishing resentment like a fire that never dies. The Buddha's teaching reminds us that the story is often heavier than the event itself. How can we release anger when it rises? Try this gentle practice the next time you feel provoked. Pause before reaction. When anger flares, stop. Take one deep breath. Hold it for a second and slowly release. Visualize the empty boat. Imagine the situation drifting toward you without a captain, without intention. Label the story. Notice when your mind says, "They are against me. They don't care about me." Silently remind yourself, this is only a story. Return to presence. Feel your body, your hands resting, your feet touching the ground. Allow the moment to be just what it is, no more, no less. This practice does not deny that accidents, mistakes, or even cruelty exist. Instead, it loosens the grip of the mind that wants to make everything personal. The empty boat teaches us that letting go of anger is not about excusing others, but about freeing ourselves. Anger is heavy. It steals energy, distorts perception, and leaves the heart restless. When we learn to see with softer eyes, we begin to understand. Many of life's collisions are not deliberate blows. They are empty boats drifting on the river of conditions. You cannot stop the river from flowing. You cannot control every wave, but you can choose how you row your boat calmly, steadily, without carrying fire in your chest. To live this way is to taste freedom, moment by moment, and yet even when we release anger, life still strikes us with pain. The loss of a loved one, the failure of a dream, the aches of the body. These are arrows no one can avoid. The Buddha knew this truth deeply, and so he gave another teaching, that while the first arrow of pain is inevitable, the second arrow of suffering is not. Our next story leads us there, the two arrows. Have you ever been hurt by something small, only to realize later that the pain you carried was far heavier than the event itself? It happens to all of us. A careless remark from a colleague, a disappointing grade, a friend who cancels plans at the last minute. The sting is real, but often what lingers is not the event, but the story we tell ourselves afterward. The Buddha once described this in a powerful way. He said, "When a person is struck by an arrow, they feel pain. That first arrow is unavoidable. But then, most of us are struck by a second arrow, the arrow of our own reaction. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is suffering. The first arrow represents life itself. No one escapes it. Our bodies grow old. Loved ones die. We face illness, failure, and loss. These are the conditions of being human. The second arrow is the suffering we add through our minds. Instead of simply feeling the wound, we multiply it with judgment and fear. Why me? This shouldn't have happened. My life is ruined. The Buddha's teaching is clear. The first arrow is inevitable, but the second arrow is optional. Freedom begins when we learn to stop shooting ourselves with that second arrow. Take the end of a relationship. The breakup itself is the first arrow, sharp, painful, difficult to bear. But the second arrow appears when we begin to think, I'll never find love again. I'm not worthy. I'll always be alone. The pain of the breakup is real, but the suffering from the story is even greater. Or imagine losing a job. The sudden loss of income and security is the first arrow, but the second arrow comes when the mind whispers, I'm a failure. I'll never succeed. Everyone is judging me. Instead of facing one wound, we face many, created by our own thoughts. Even in small moments, the two arrows strike. Stub your toe on the corner of a table. That sharp flash is the first arrow. Then you curse yourself, call yourself clumsy, carry frustration for the rest of the day. That's the second arrow. Why do we let the second arrow pierce us? There are several common mistakes. Trying to avoid all pain. We believe if we just live carefully enough, pain will disappear. But no life is free from the first arrow. Confusing pain with identity. Instead of saying, I feel hurt, we say, I am broken. We fuse pain with self-image, making it heavier. Replaying the wound. Our minds replay the moment endlessly, keeping the arrow lodged long after the event has passed. Have you ever noticed how pain arrives in two waves? The first strikes suddenly, sharp and undeniable. The second lingers, heavier, woven from the stories our minds create. Think of this. You receive a phone call with bad news. A project you worked on for months has been rejected. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops. That's the first arrow, raw, immediate pain. But then your mind begins its work. I'm useless. My boss will never trust me again. Maybe I'm not cut out for this job. Suddenly, the original disappointment is multiplied into a storm of suffering. That's the second arrow. The Buddha once explained this truth with beautiful simplicity. When touched by a painful feeling, the ordinary person sorrows, grieves, and laments. They feel two arrows, the physical pain and the mental pain. But the wise one feels only the first arrow. The first arrow is life itself. It comes in many forms: illness, aging, loss, failure. No one escapes it. The second arrow is the story we add. Instead of just feeling what is, we pile on judgment, blame, fear, and self-punishment. This teaching connects deeply with the Buddha's first noble truth. Life contains dukkha, suffering, pain, unsatisfactoriness. The second truth explains its cause, craving and clinging. The second arrow is craving for things to be different, clinging to the idea that pain should never touch us. When we forget this, we turn every small wound into an identity. I am broken. I am worthless. I am forever unlucky. But these are stories, not truth. The wound may be real, but the identity is imagined. Consider heartbreak. A relationship ends. The first arrow pierces deep. The loneliness, the silence in the house where laughter once was. But the second arrow whispers cruelly, I will never be loved again. Something is wrong with me. The breakup itself is painful, but the ongoing story becomes unbearable. Or picture a high school student who fails an exam. The first arrow is the failing grade, but the second arrow comes when the mind declares, I am stupid. I will never succeed. My parents will never be proud of me. A single moment becomes a lifelong sentence. Think about physical pain. You sprain an ankle while jogging. The first arrow is the throb in the joint. The second arrow is the inner dialogue. Why me? I can't stand this. My life is ruined if I can't run. The injury is temporary, but the suffering expands without end. And in modern America, there is another arrow that often strikes. The arrow of comparison. Social media shows everyone smiling, traveling, succeeding. The first arrow may be a bad day at work. The second arrow is scrolling through Instagram and thinking, everyone else is happy. I am falling behind. Suddenly, a small setback turns into a story of inadequacy. Why do we allow the second arrow to pierce us again and again? 1. Trying to avoid all pain. We live as if comfort can be permanent, but no amount of planning or success can stop the first arrow. Life is impermanent. Confusing pain with identity. Instead of saying, this hurts, we say, I am this hurt. The wound becomes who we think we are. Replaying the wound. We replay conversations, imagine alternate endings, argue with ghosts in our mind. Each replay drives the second arrow deeper. These mistakes are deeply human, but they are not unchangeable. With mindfulness, we can learn to pause between the first arrow and the second. The second arrow hides in many corners of daily life. Imagine this. You are standing in the checkout line at a supermarket. The cashier moves slowly. The customer ahead of you fumbles with coupons, and you feel irritation rising. That irritation is already uncomfortable, the first arrow. But then the second arrow lands. Why is my life always full of delays? Why can't people be more competent? A minor inconvenience becomes a story of injustice. Or picture a young parent. Their baby wakes them up at 3 a.m. The exhaustion itself is the first arrow. But the second arrow comes with the thought, I'll never sleep again. My life is over. I can't handle this. The sleepless night is real, but the story multiplies the suffering. Even in friendships, the two arrows strike. A friend forgets your birthday. The sting of being overlooked is the first arrow. But then the mind declares, they don't care about me. Nobody truly values me. That belief becomes heavier than the forgotten greeting itself. How can we stop the second arrow from piercing us? The Buddha offered mindfulness as a shield. Here is a gentle practice. Notice the first arrow. When something hurts, pause and simply say to yourself, this is pain. It hurts. Acknowledge it without denial. Catch the second arrow. Watch for the moment your mind adds the story. I'll never recover. This always happens to me. Naming it breaks its power. Return to the body. Feel your breath moving in and out. Place a hand on your chest and sense the rhythm of your heart. This anchors you in what is real, not imagined. Soften with compassion. Speak to yourself gently. Pain is here, But suffering is optional. I choose kindness. Let go. Visualize the second arrow dropping from your grasp. You cannot avoid the first, but you can refuse the second. Practicing in small moments, like when you stub your toe, miss a bus, or feel ignored, trains the mind for larger storms. The Buddha's wisdom is not abstract. It is deeply practical. Every day brings arrows. Some are sharp, some are small, but all are part of the human experience. We cannot stop the first arrow, life's inevitable pains, but we can refuse to add the second. This is where freedom begins, not in controlling the world, but in transforming our relationship to it. When we stop multiplying pain with stories, we discover space inside ourselves, a calm river running beneath the storm. So when life hurts, pause and ask, is this the first arrow or the second? That question alone can open the door to peace. But there is something deeper still. The two arrows remind us that pain is universal, but sometimes, when loss strikes, we forget this truth. We feel alone in grief, as if no one else could possibly understand. Long ago, a grieving mother named Kisa Gotami begged the Buddha to bring her dead child back to life. He told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a household untouched by death." She searched every home, but found none. In the end, she realized what the Buddha had hoped to show her. Death touches every family, every heart. This is the story of the mustard seed. There is a grief so deep it steals the breath from your lungs. Anyone who has lost someone they love knows this weight. The kind of sorrow that makes the world feel empty, silent and cruel. Long ago, in the time of the Buddha, a young mother named Kisa Gotami faced this very grief. Her only child had died suddenly. Unable to accept it, she carried the small body in her arms and wandered from house to house, begging for medicine that could bring him back. Her neighbors pitied her, but none could help. At last, someone told her, "Go to the Buddha. He will know what to do." When she reached him, tears streaming, she cried, "Please, Lord, give me medicine for my child. You have the power. Save him." The Buddha looked at her with compassion. He did not tell her that nothing could be done. Instead, he gave her a task. "Bring me a single mustard seed from a household untouched by death. If you can find one, your child will live again." Grasping this sliver of hope, Kisa Gotami set out at once. She knocked on doors across the village. At each house she asked, "Has death visited here?" And in every home, the answer was the same. Yes. A father, a mother, a brother, a sister, we too have lost someone. House by house, the truth dawned. She could not find even one family spared from loss. At last her arms grew heavy, her tears ran dry, and she laid her child to rest. In that moment, she understood what the Buddha had wished her to see, that death is universal. This story illustrates one of the Buddha's most important teachings, anicca, impermanence. Everything that arises will pass away. No joy lasts forever, no sorrow lasts forever, and no life escapes death. The Buddha did not deny Kisa Gotami's pain. Instead, he expanded her vision. He showed her that she was not alone, that her suffering was not a punishment, and that loss is woven into the very fabric of existence. In Buddhist thought, much of our pain deepens when we believe, "This shouldn't happen to me. I am the only one who suffers like this." But when we realize that all beings share in birth, aging, sickness, and death, something shifts. The sharpness of grief softens into compassion, and the sense of isolation begins to fade. In modern life, grief wears many faces. A family in New York loses their home to fire. A student in California loses her scholarship after years of effort. A retiree in Florida loses his lifelong partner to illness. Each of these is the first arrow, the unavoidable pain of loss. But often, a second arrow follows. Why me? Everyone else is happy. I am cursed. This is where the mustard seed story speaks directly to us. It reminds us that suffering is not a personal defect. It is part of the human condition. Every house has its grief. Every heart has its scars. When grief strikes, the first arrow is sharp enough. But so often, we shoot ourselves with second arrows, making the wound even deeper. One common mistake is believing we are alone in our pain. When someone we love dies, or when we lose a dream, it feels like the world has singled us out for punishment. We look around and imagine that everyone else is happy, untouched by tragedy. Yet, as Kisa Gotami discovered, every house carries its own story of loss. The loneliness of grief is real, but the belief that I am the only one is not. Another mistake is trying to bargain with reality. We cling to the thought, if only I had done this differently, if only I had said that, if only I had more time. These thoughts replay endlessly, but they do not change the truth. Instead, they trap us in regret, adding weight to the pain. A third mistake is turning grief into identity. We begin to define ourselves entirely by the loss. I am the woman who lost her child. I am the man whose career collapsed. I am the one who suffers. While the event is real, the self-image we build around it prolongs suffering long after the moment has passed. The story of the mustard seed is not meant to be cold or dismissive. It is not saying, everyone suffers, so stop crying. Instead, it offers two gentle reminders. Impermanence is universal. Nothing escapes change. Not our bodies, not our possessions, not even the people we love most. Compassion grows from shared suffering. When we realize that loss touches all beings, our grief transforms. Instead of feeling cursed, we begin to feel connected. This is why funerals in Buddhist tradition are not only for mourning, but also for reflection. They remind us that life is fragile and therefore precious. They teach us to cherish the time we have, to speak kindly, to forgive quickly, and to live fully. Imagine a nurse working in a hospital. Every day she witnesses death. At first she feels overwhelmed, thinking, how unfair, how can I endure so much sorrow? But over time, she begins to see that death is part of life's cycle. Instead of despair, she learns compassion for her patients, for their families, and for herself. Or think of a child who loses a beloved pet. The grief feels unbearable. Yet when guided gently, the child learns that all living beings share this journey. The loss becomes not just pain, but also a first lesson in love, compassion, and the value of each fleeting moment. And in communities struck by disaster, hurricanes, fires, floods, we see families who have lost everything come together. They cook for each other, rebuild homes, and comfort one another. The grief is still there, but in recognizing its universality, healing begins. The mustard seed story whispers to us, you are not alone. Your sorrow is not a punishment. It is the echo of being human. When grief feels endless, pause and remember, every house has known loss, every heart has cried. And in that truth, you can allow compassion to rise for yourself and for others walking the same road. Grief cannot be erased, but it can be carried differently. The Buddha never promised a life free of pain. He promised freedom from the chains we add to pain. Here are a few simple practices inspired by his teaching. Name the loss gently. Instead of denying it or drowning in it, whisper to yourself, this hurts. This is grief. Naming it brings honesty, and honesty begins healing. Share your sorrow. Just as Kaiser Gotami discovered, every house has known loss. Speak with others. Listen to their stories. When grief is shared, it softens. Compassion grows in the space between hearts. Practice impermanence meditation. Hold something fragile in your hands. A flower, a fallen leaf, even a photograph. Breathe in, noticing its beauty. Breathe out, remembering it will not last forever. This does not diminish its value. It deepens it. Turn grief into compassion. When you feel overwhelmed, imagine others in the world who are grieving too. Whisper silently, "May all who suffer find peace." This small act transforms sorrow into connection. The mustard seed teaches us a lesson, both heartbreaking and liberating. Loss is not personal, it is universal. When we fight against death, we harden. When we deny change, we suffer. But when we open our eyes to impermanence, a softer wisdom emerges. Because life is fleeting, every moment matters. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we begin to ask, "How can I live with love, knowing time is short?" Instead of clinging to what must pass, we learn to embrace while we have it. And when loss finally comes, we bow, knowing we are walking the same path as every being who has ever lived. This does not erase grief. Tears will still fall. But in those tears, there is also tenderness, connection, and the seed of compassion. Kisa Gotami's journey shows us the universality of suffering. Every household knows death. Every heart carries loss. And yet, life continues to flow. Sometimes what appears to be a tragedy may later reveal itself as a blessing. The next teaching reminds us not to label events too quickly. Not as good, not as bad. It is the story of the farmer's horse, a parable about patience, perspective, and the wisdom of saying, "We'll see." There is a story often told in Zen circles, one that begins in a small farming village. A poor farmer owned a single horse, his most valuable possession. One day, the horse ran away. The neighbors gathered and said, "What bad luck. Now you have nothing." The farmer replied calmly, "Maybe so. We'll see." A week later, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors exclaimed, "What good fortune! You are rich now." Again, the farmer only said, "Maybe so. We'll see." Not long after, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses. He was thrown violently and broke his leg. The neighbors shook their heads. What terrible luck. The farmer answered as before, "Maybe so. We'll see." A few weeks later, soldiers came to the village to draft all the young men for war. Because of his broken leg, the farmer's son was spared. This time the neighbors said, "How lucky you are." And once again, the farmer simply said, "Maybe so. We'll see." This story captures the heart of equanimity, or upekkha, one of the 4 immeasurable states in Buddhism. It reminds us not to cling too tightly to labels of good or bad. Life is like a flowing river. What looks like misfortune today may turn out to be a hidden blessing tomorrow. What feels like success in the moment may bring challenges later. The Buddha called this anicca, impermanence. Nothing stays fixed. Events change, meanings shift, and outcomes unfold in ways we cannot foresee. By pausing before judgment, by saying "we'll see," we step back from the roller coaster of highs and lows. We learn to rest in balance, not tossed around by every rise and fall. In modern life, how often do we rush to label events? A person loses a job. Immediately they think, "This is disaster. My life is ruined." Yet months later, that loss opens a door to a better career or even a long-dreamed-of calling. A teenager is rejected by their first choice of college. The sting is real, but later, the school they attend instead brings friendships, mentors, and opportunities that shape their life in unexpected ways. A sudden illness forces someone to slow down. At first it feels like tragedy, but in the quiet space, they discover time for reflection, deeper relationships, even spiritual practice. Like the farmer's horse, life keeps shifting. Today's sorrow may be tomorrow's grace. Today's success may carry tomorrow's trials. The teaching is not to suppress feelings or pretend pain doesn't hurt. The farmer surely felt sorrow when his son broke his leg. But he also knew that labeling events too quickly closes the door to wisdom. So he practiced patience, balance, and humility before the vast unfolding of life. When life surprises us, most of us rush to judge. We want certainty, so we stamp events with labels, good or bad, success or failure. But these quick judgments often become the seeds of suffering. We cling to outcomes. When something goes our way, we grasp it tightly, fearing it will slip away. When things fall apart, we despair as if happiness will never return. We confuse the moment with the whole story. A setback feels like the end of the road. We forget that life keeps unfolding, that the book has many chapters yet to be written. We compare with others. Social media intensifies this. Someone else's good fortune becomes a mirror of our bad luck. Yet the truth is, we only see a fragment of their story, never the whole. The Buddha often used the metaphor of the middle way, a path that avoids extremes. The farmer's words, "we'll see," reflect this wisdom. He did not deny joy or sorrow, but he refused to be consumed by them. In Buddhist thought, this is also connected to dependent origination, pratyasamutpada. No event stands alone. Every moment is woven from countless causes and conditions, rippling outward into future consequences we cannot predict. To label something final is to ignore the vast web of connections still unfolding. A young athlete suffers a serious injury. At first, it feels like the end of their dream. But during recovery, they discover a love for coaching, guiding others in ways they never imagined. A couple misses out on buying their dream house because of financial struggles. Months later, they find a smaller home that becomes the heart of their family, filled with laughter and warmth. A business fails. The shame is sharp. Yet many entrepreneurs later say that failure taught them more than success ever could, preparing them for ventures that truly mattered. Each of these echoes the farmer's story. What seemed like loss in the moment became a door to something unexpected. We cannot always control the twists of fate, but we can pause before rushing to judgment. Instead of declaring, "this is terrible," or "this is amazing," we can whisper, "we'll see." That pause creates space. Space for patience, space for balance, space for wisdom to grow. The wisdom of the farmer is not just a story to admire. It is a way of living we can practice every day. Here are some gentle ways to train the mind to respond with balance, instead of rushing to judgment. Pause before labeling. When something unexpected happens, resist the urge to call it good or bad. Instead, take 3 slow breaths and silently say, "We'll see." This creates distance between the event and your reaction. Keep a journal of unfolding events. Write down what seemed like misfortune and return to it weeks or months later. Often you'll notice how time reshaped the meaning. This practice builds trust in impermanence. Practice equanimity meditation. Sit quietly and repeat phrases such as, "I accept joy when it comes, and I release it when it passes. I accept sorrow when it comes, and I release it when it passes." These reminders train the heart to welcome change with softness. Notice the hidden blessings. Each evening, reflect on one moment from the day that at first felt frustrating, but later revealed a gift. Gratitude shifts perspective and helps you see the wild horses that sometimes return after loss. The farmer's story teaches us a profound lesson. Life is too vast to be reduced to instant labels. When we rush to declare something a disaster, we may miss the blessing it carries. When we cling to good fortune as permanent, we set ourselves up for heartbreak. Wisdom lies in patience, in remembering that life unfolds beyond our sight. By saying "we'll see," we honor both joy and sorrow without becoming prisoners of either. This is not indifference, it is freedom. It is a heart that can stay steady in the storm, yet tender in compassion. Think back on your own life. Was there a time when something felt like the worst moment, only to later reveal itself as a turning point? Perhaps losing a job opened a door to your true calling. Perhaps a breakup gave you the chance to discover your own strength. Perhaps a failure taught you humility that success never could. These are the farmer's horses, running away, returning, breaking, healing. Life moves in circles we cannot predict. The invitation is not to control them, but to walk alongside them with steady steps. The farmer's calm words, "We'll see," remind us that balance brings peace. But balance is tested most when we face anger, our own and that of others. The Buddha once told a story of a man consumed by rage who hurled insults at him, expecting retaliation. What happened instead was a lesson in refusing to accept the gift of anger. This leads us into our next teaching, the angry man. The wisdom of the farmer is not just a story to admire. It is a way of living we can practice every day. Here are some gentle ways to train the mind to respond with balance instead of rushing to judgment. Pause before labeling. When something unexpected happens, resist the urge to call it good or bad. Instead, take 3 slow breaths and silently say, "We'll see." This creates distance between the event and your reaction. Keep a journal of unfolding events. Write down what seemed like misfortune and return to it weeks or months later. Often you'll notice how time reshaped the meaning. This practice builds trust in impermanence. Practice equanimity meditation. Sit quietly and repeat phrases such as, "I accept joy when it comes, and I release it when it passes. I accept sorrow when it comes, and I release it when it passes." These reminders train the heart to welcome change with softness. Notice the hidden blessings. Each evening, reflect on one moment from the day that at first felt frustrating, but later revealed a gift. Gratitude shifts perspective and helps you see the wild horses that sometimes return after loss. The farmer's story teaches us a profound lesson. Life is too vast to be reduced to instant labels. When we rush to declare something a disaster, we may miss the blessing it carries. When we cling to good fortune as permanent, we set ourselves up for heartbreak. Wisdom lies in patience, in remembering that life unfolds beyond our sight. By saying "we'll see," we honor both joy and sorrow without becoming prisoners of either. This is not indifference, it is freedom. It is a heart that can stay steady in the storm, yet tender in compassion. Think back on your own life. Was there a time when something felt like the worst moment, only to later reveal itself as a turning point? Perhaps losing a job opened a door to your true calling. Perhaps a breakup gave you the chance to discover your own strength. Perhaps a failure taught you humility that success never could. These are the farmer's horses, running away, returning, breaking, healing. Life moves in circles we cannot predict. The invitation is not to control them, but to walk alongside them with steady steps. The farmer's calm words, "We'll see," remind us that balance brings peace. But balance is tested most when we face anger, our own and that of others. The Buddha once told a story of a man consumed by rage who hurled insults at him, expecting retaliation. What happened instead was a lesson in refusing to accept the gift of anger. This leads us into our next teaching, the angry man. Anger is like fire. It can flare up in an instant, consuming peace of mind, burning bridges, and leaving ashes where once there was connection. And just like fire, it often harms the one who carries it more than anyone else. There is a story from the time of the Buddha. One day, a man, furious with resentment, approached the Buddha. He shouted, cursed, and insulted him, hoping to provoke a reaction. Everyone watching expected anger in return, but the Buddha remained calm, silent, and steady. When the man paused to catch his breath, the Buddha spoke gently. If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The man, startled, replied, "It remains with the giver." The Buddha nodded. So too with anger. If I do not accept your words, they remain with you. This story reveals something profound. Anger is not something we must pick up. When we refuse it, it cannot enter our hearts. The Buddha taught that anger, dosa, is one of the 3 root poisons, along with greed and delusion. It clouds wisdom, blinds compassion, and binds us to suffering. Yet anger is also deeply human. To transform it, we must first understand it. When someone insults us, our sense of ego reacts. How dare they speak to me like that? We identify so strongly with our pride that we feel threatened. But the insult itself is only sound, vibrations in the air. The suffering comes from how tightly we grasp it. In refusing the gift of anger, the Buddha modeled equanimity, upekkha, the calm balance that sees clearly. This anger is not mine. I do not need to carry it. Think of a workplace scenario. A colleague snaps at you during a stressful meeting. Instantly, your body tenses. The mind whispers, "They disrespected me. I need to snap back." But what if you paused and remembered the Buddha's teaching? You could recognize their words as their gift of anger, one you do not have to accept. Or imagine being online. Someone leaves a harsh comment on your social media post. The instinct is to defend, to fight back. Yet, just like the Buddha, you can choose not to accept it. Their words belong to them. If you don't take them in, they cannot poison your peace. Even at home, anger appears. A child throws a tantrum, or a partner speaks harshly after a long day. In those moments, the practice is not to deny your feelings, but to choose whether or not to receive their anger as your own. The Buddha's response reminds us that we are not powerless before anger. Just as we can refuse an unwanted gift, we can decline to carry another's rage in our hearts. Anger is universal, yet the ways we handle it often make the fire burn hotter. The first mistake we make is believing anger is strength. Many people think, if I raise my voice, I'll win. If I look fierce, no one will mess with me. But true strength is not in the volume of our voice, it is in the steadiness of our heart. Anger may silence others for a moment, but it rarely earns respect. The second mistake is taking anger personally. When someone lashes out, we think it is about us. They hate me, they're attacking me. But often, their outburst is about their own suffering, stress, fear, or pain they don't know how to handle. By making it personal, we add weight to a burden that was never ours. A third mistake is feeding anger with anger. We mirror what is thrown at us. They shout, so we shout louder. They insult, so we insult deeper. Soon, no one remembers the cause of the fight. Only the bitterness remains. Buddhism teaches that anger is like a torch held in the hand. You think you are throwing fire at another, but it is your own hand that burns first. The Buddha often spoke of metta, loving kindness, as the antidote. Not because anger is erased by pretending to be nice, but because anger melts in the warmth of compassion. To see that the angry person is suffering changes everything. Instead of an enemy, we see a fellow human caught in flames. In the story, when the Buddha refused the gift of anger, he did not just protect his own peace, he also offered the man a mirror. The man saw his own rage reflected back at him and realized it was his to carry, not the Buddha's. This is the quiet power of non-reaction. It reveals the truth without a single word of argument. Consider a customer service worker being yelled at by a frustrated client. If they absorb the anger, they may cry or lash back. But if they remember, this anger belongs to them, not me, they can stay calm, and often the storm passes more quickly. Or think of a teacher facing a disruptive student. If the teacher reacts with the same energy, the classroom erupts. But if the teacher holds steady, refuses to accept the gift, the tension often dissolves. Even in politics and public life, we see the same. Leaders who answer anger with anger only deepen division. But those who remain calm, steady, and clear become anchors of trust in turbulent times. The Buddha's teaching is not to suppress anger, but to understand it. Anger is energy. If we grasp it, it consumes us. If we see it for what it is, a passing storm, it loses its power. Each time we face anger, we stand at a crossroads. Do we carry the gift into our hearts, or do we let it return to the giver? The Buddha never denied anger. He simply showed us that we do not have to be its prisoner. Here are some gentle practices to help transform anger into clarity and compassion. Pause and breathe. When anger flares, pause for 3 deep breaths. Feel the air move in and out of your body. Each breath gives space for wisdom to step in before words or actions can wound. See the suffering behind the anger. When someone shouts or insults you, silently remind yourself, they are hurting. This is their pain speaking. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps you see beyond the flames. No. Use the empty gift visualization. Imagine the angry words as a gift being handed to you. Picture yourself gently refusing it, letting it fall back to the ground. You do not need to carry it. Practice loving kindness meditation, metta. Repeat phrases such as, may I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I live with ease. Then extend the same to the person who angered you. Over time, the heart softens and anger loses its grip. The story of the angry man teaches us a radical freedom. We cannot stop others from being angry, but we can choose whether to accept their anger. This is not weakness. It is strength of the deepest kind. The strength to remain unshaken, to protect your peace, and to meet fire with water. Every time you refuse the gift of anger, you break a cycle. You prevent another flame from spreading. You create the possibility of compassion, even in the middle of conflict. So the next time someone shouts, curses, or criticizes, pause and ask yourself, do I want to carry this gift, or let it return to its giver? The choice is always yours. Think back to moments in your own life when anger was offered to you. A co-worker's harsh words, a stranger's rudeness, a loved one's sharp tone. What would have changed if you had not accepted their anger? This reflection is not about regret, but about planting a seed for the future. Each new moment is another chance to practice. Just as we can refuse the gift of anger, we must also learn to accept the gift of impermanence. Everything we hold dear, possessions, relationships, even our very bodies, will one day break or fade. The next story, simple yet profound, begins with a single cup. It reminds us to cherish what we have, knowing it is already fragile. This is the teaching of the broken teacup. There is a well-known story from the Buddhist tradition about a simple teacup. A monk once held up his favorite cup before his students. It was beautiful, with delicate patterns painted by hand. The monk smiled and said, "For me, this cup is already broken." The students were puzzled. The cup was whole, uncracked, perfect, but the monk continued, "Because I know it will one day break, I can truly enjoy it now. When I drink tea, I appreciate its form and its use. When it falls and shatters, I say, of course. Knowing it is already broken, I can live in peace." This story points directly to one of the Buddha's central teachings, anicca, impermanence. Everything we hold, everything we love will one day change, fade, or fall apart. To deny this truth is to live in constant fear. To accept it is to live with freedom and joy. The broken teacup is not about pessimism. It is about appreciation. When we pretend things will last forever, we cling tightly. We suffer when they change, because we thought they never would. But when we remember impermanence, each moment becomes more precious. The Buddha taught that attachment creates suffering. We cling to people, possessions, even our own youth. But clinging cannot stop the passage of time. By accepting impermanence, we do not love less, we love more deeply, because we know each moment is fleeting. Think of a parent watching their child grow. The first steps, the first day of school, the first time they drive a car, all of it passes quickly. If we cling to the idea of keeping them small forever, we suffer. But if we remember the broken teacup, we savor each stage as it comes, knowing it cannot last. Or consider technology. A brand new phone feels exciting, but within a year it scratches, slows, and is replaced. If we cling to its perfection, frustration grows. If we accept that it was already broken, we appreciate its usefulness while it lasts. Even in relationships, the same truth applies. Friendships shift, romances change, loved ones pass away. To cling as if they will never leave is to guarantee heartbreak. But to love while knowing it is temporary is to love fully, without illusion. The monk's teacup is our reminder. Everything we hold is fragile. This is not a reason for despair. It is the reason to cherish more deeply, to live with gratitude. When it comes to change and loss, many of us struggle. The first mistake we make is pretending impermanence does not exist. We act as though our possessions will last forever. Our health will remain steady. Our loved ones will never leave. Deep down, we know this isn't true, but denial feels safer than acceptance. The second mistake is clinging to what we cannot hold. We polish our cars endlessly, fearing every scratch. We chase anti-aging remedies, believing we can stop the clock. We hold on to relationships long after they've ended, unable to let go of memories. But clinging does not stop change. It only multiplies suffering when the inevitable happens. A third mistake is turning impermanence into despair. Some people, when reminded of change, say, "What's the point of anything then? If everything breaks, why bother?" This is a misunderstanding. The monk's teacup was not a reason for hopelessness, it was a reason for gratitude. The Buddha taught impermanence not to frighten us, but to awaken us. When we know that time is short, we begin to use it wisely. Think of the seasons. Autumn leaves fall, winter snow melts, spring blossoms return. None of it lasts, yet the cycle brings beauty. Our lives too have seasons. Childhood, adulthood, old age, all pass quickly. To fight this truth is to miss the beauty. To embrace it is to live fully in each season. Impermanence is also the ground of possibility. Because nothing is fixed, change is possible. A person weighed down by anger can become kind. A life of sorrow can turn toward joy. A broken heart can heal. If everything were permanent, transformation would be impossible. A young professional in New York fears losing her job. She spends nights awake, clinging to security. When layoffs finally come, she discovers the freedom to pursue a passion she had long buried. What seemed like the end became a beginning. A family treasures their home. When a storm damages it, they mourn deeply. But in rebuilding, they create new memories, closer bonds, and a stronger sense of resilience. An elderly man watches his strength fade. At first, he resists with anger. But later, he learns to savor slow walks, quiet mornings, and the gentle presence of loved ones. The impermanence of his body teaches him appreciation. The broken teacup is not a symbol of loss. It is a symbol of love. Because we know it will one day break, we can drink from it with full awareness today. To deny impermanence is to live in fear. To embrace impermanence is to live in gratitude. Impermanence is not just a truth to think about, it is a truth to live. Here are a few gentle practices to help bring the teaching of the broken teacup into daily life. Mindful appreciation. Each morning, pause and notice something ordinary. A cup of coffee, the sound of birds, a loved one's smile. Whisper silently, "This moment will not last. Let me treasure it fully." The Impermanence Journal. At the end of each day, write down one thing that changed, something that ended, or something new that began. Over time, you'll see how natural change really is. Gratitude in relationships. When with friends or family, remember that nothing is guaranteed. Instead of assuming they will always be there, treat each encounter as precious. Say the kind word now. Offer the hug now. Letting go practice. Choose one object you're attached to. Perhaps an old shirt, a gadget, or even a box of memories. Practice releasing it with love. This small act trains the heart for larger goodbyes. The monk's teacup reminds us everything is already fragile, already passing. This is not a curse, it is a blessing. Because the cup will break, we can cherish it now. Because loved ones will one day be gone, we can love them fiercely while they are here. Because life itself will end, we can live with gratitude rather than fear. Impermanence teaches us to love without clinging, to hold without grasping, to live without regret. When we forget, we suffer. When we remember, even a simple sip of tea becomes a miracle. Pause for a moment. Think of one person, one place, or one object in your life that you deeply value. Imagine that it is already broken, already gone. How does that change the way you see it now? Most often, this reflection doesn't make us love less. It makes us love more. This is the gift of the broken teacup. Awareness that deepens love, gratitude, and presence. The teacup's quiet wisdom shows us how to face impermanence with grace. But what about generosity? How do we give not from pride or show, but from genuine compassion? The Buddha once spoke of a robe offered with sincerity, not for recognition. That story reminds us that true giving is measured not by what is given, but by the heart that gives. This brings us to our next teaching, the robe. There is a story about the Buddha and a robe that reveals the heart of true generosity. One day, a wealthy man approached the Buddha with a gift. He carried a robe of the finest fabric, woven with intricate patterns, dyed in rare colors. He presented it proudly, bowing deeply, but in his heart, he longed for recognition. He wanted others to admire his generosity and to see him as a great benefactor. Not long after, a poor woman came to the Buddha. She had almost nothing, yet she carried a simple robe she had stitched from scraps of cloth. It was plain, unadorned, even a little worn. With humility, she placed it before the Buddha, saying softly, "This is all I have, but I offer it with my whole heart." The Buddha accepted her robe with gratitude, honoring it as deeply as the fine robe of the wealthy man. Then he turned to his disciples and said, "True giving is not measured by wealth, but by the heart that gives." In Buddhism, generosity, dana, is considered the first of the paramitas, or perfections. It is the foundation of spiritual practice, because giving loosens the grip of greed and self-centeredness. But the story of the robe teaches us an important distinction. Giving is not about the size of the gift, nor the applause it receives. True generosity flows from compassion, from the sincere wish to ease another's burden. The wealthy man gave with pride, the woman gave with humility. One sought admiration, the other sought to help. Both offered robes, but their hearts were different. In modern life, we see the same truth. A company donates millions to charity but splashes its name across billboards, seeking praise. Another person quietly pays for a stranger's groceries without anyone noticing. Both acts have value, but one is rooted in image, the other in love. A child shares half of their sandwich with a hungry classmate. It is a small gift, but because it is all they have, it is immense. A nurse stays late after her shift, not for overtime, but because she cannot bear to leave her patient alone. That extra hour of presence is worth more than money. The robe reminds us, generosity is not about what we give, but about how we give. Even the smallest act, when offered with sincerity, shines brighter than the grandest display done for show. Generosity is a virtue, but like all virtues, it can be misunderstood. The first mistake people often make is giving to be seen. We donate, volunteer, or share, but secretly we crave recognition. We want our name on the plaque, our photo in the newsletter, the applause of the crowd. The act may look generous on the outside, but inside, it feeds the ego more than it eases suffering. The second mistake is giving with attachment. Sometimes we give but expect something in return: gratitude, loyalty, or favors. When thanks is not expressed, resentment grows. True generosity asks for nothing back. A third mistake is judging the size of the gift. Many believe generosity only counts if it's large, but the Buddha's teaching is clear. It is the sincerity, not the size, that matters. A small gift given with love may outweigh a fortune given for show. In the Buddhist tradition, dana is not just about material things. It also includes giving time, energy, patience, forgiveness, and even a smile. Each act of giving loosens the grip of selfishness, softening the heart and opening space for compassion. The robe story also connects to the practice of non-attachment. When we give, we practice letting go, not only of the object, but of our desire to control how it is received. The wealthy man clung to pride, while the poor woman let go of everything but her sincere wish to help. True generosity is a training ground for freedom. Each act teaches us that we are not diminished by giving, we are expanded. A student helps a classmate struggling with homework. She doesn't expect praise, she simply knows the other will benefit. That moment of kindness plants seeds of friendship and trust. A neighbor mows the lawn for an elderly couple who cannot manage it anymore. They don't post it on social media. They simply smile, wave, and keep going. In times of crisis, after hurricanes, fires, or floods, we often see strangers show up with blankets, food, and comfort. These are not wealthy benefactors. They are ordinary people moved by compassion. And sometimes, generosity is as simple as patience, choosing not to snap at a tired cashier, or offering a kind word to someone clearly having a hard day. When we give with expectation, the gift grows heavy. When we give with love, the gift becomes light, for us and for the receiver. The robe teaches us to look not at the fabric of the gift, but at the fabric of the heart. Generosity is like a muscle. The more we practice, the stronger it becomes. Here are some gentle ways to bring the spirit of the robe into everyday life. Give quietly. Try offering something without anyone knowing. Pay for the coffee of the person behind you. Leave food on a neighbor's doorstep. Give in secret, so the only reward is the joy of giving itself. Offer non-material gifts. Not everyone has wealth to share, but everyone has time, kindness, and presence. A listening ear, a smile, or a gentle word may heal more than money ever could. Practice letting go. Choose one object at home you rarely use but still cling to. Offer it to someone who needs it more. Notice how letting go of attachment lightens your heart. Expand the circle. At first, we give only to those we love. As practice deepens, extend generosity to strangers and even to those you may not get along with. This widens the heart beyond self-interest. The robe story whispers a simple truth. True giving is measured not by what is given, but by the heart that gives. The wealthy man gave riches, but sought recognition. The poor woman gave scraps, but offered her whole heart. And in the eyes of wisdom, it was her robe that shone brightest. When we give with sincerity, every act becomes sacred. A coin, a smile, a word of comfort, all carry infinite value when offered with compassion. The robe reminds us, generosity is not about subtraction. When we give from the heart, we are not diminished. We are expanded. Pause and reflect. Who in your life could use a gift of presence today? Perhaps a friend who needs a call, a family member who longs for forgiveness, or even a stranger who needs a moment of kindness. Generosity is not an event. It is a way of being. The robe we offer may fade, but the love behind it endures. From generosity, we move to another lesson, this time about letting go of what we carry. Two monks once came upon a woman struggling to cross a river. One lifted her and carried her across. Hours later, the other monk fumed. "Why did you touch her? We are monks, we cannot do that." To which the first monk replied, "I set her down at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her?" This is the story of two monks and a woman. Two monks were traveling together on a long journey. As they walked, they reached a river swollen with rain. On the bank stood a young woman, frightened and unable to cross. She looked at the monks and pleaded, "Please, can one of you help me across?" The younger monks stiffened. Their monastic rules were strict. Touching a woman was forbidden. To him, even the thought was unthinkable. But without hesitation, the older monk lifted the woman onto his shoulders, carried her through the rushing water, and gently set her down on the opposite bank. She bowed in gratitude and went on her way. The two monks continued walking in silence. Hours passed, but the younger monk grew more and more restless. Finally, unable to hold back, he burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? We are monks. We must avoid women, and you carried her in your arms." The older monk looked at him calmly and said, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story goes straight to the heart of one of the Buddha's essential teachings, letting go. The older monk practiced true compassion. He saw a human being in need and responded without attachment. Once the act was complete, he moved on, his mind clear. The younger monk, however, carried the burden of judgment long after the moment had passed. He held on to his anger and confusion, making the load heavier with each step. This is how our minds often work. We replay old arguments, dwell on past mistakes, and carry grudges long after the event is over. The Buddha compared this to carrying a heavy sack of stones. Each memory of resentment adds another rock, until our hearts are weighed down. Think of a workplace. A manager once criticizes you unfairly. The meeting ends, but your mind replays the words for days. You carry the woman across the river, long after the actual moment ended. Or imagine a family argument. Harsh words are exchanged. Hours later, everyone else has moved on, but you still carry the anger. The burden becomes heavier the longer you hold it. Even in small moments, this truth applies. A stranger cuts in line at the store. The incident is over in seconds, but the resentment lingers as you replay it again and again. The older monk's wisdom is simple. Put it down. Compassion acts when needed, but attachment keeps the mind in chains. When we let go, we walk lighter. Most of us are more like the younger monk than we'd like to admit. We may let go physically, but in our minds, we continue to carry the weight. There are several common mistakes we make, confusing memory with reality. An event may have ended, but we keep replaying it as though thinking about it could change the past. In truth, the only thing we change is the heaviness in our own hearts. Believing that holding on gives us control. We tell ourselves, if I keep this anger alive, I will protect myself. If I don't forgive, they can't hurt me again. But instead of protecting us, the anger keeps us bound, letting ego magnify the wound. The younger monk clung to his identity as a rule keeper. His pride made the older monk's act unbearable in his eyes. In the same way, our ego whispers, "How dare they treat me this way? I deserve better." The wound deepens not because of the act itself, but because of the story ego builds around it. The Buddha often spoke of non-self, anatta. We are not our thoughts, not our grudges, not even our memories. When we identify too closely with these mental formations, we carry them as if they are part of us. But when we see them as passing clouds, we can let them drift away. The older monk embodied this. He carried the woman because compassion required it. But once the act was complete, he did not cling to pride, shame, or guilt. He saw the act as a moment in time, no more, no less. That clarity is the fruit of non-attachment. A young professional is unfairly blamed for a mistake in a team project. The meeting ends, but the sting lingers. For days, he replays the injustice. The incident lasted 5 minutes, but his suffering lasts far longer. A mother remembers a harsh comment her teenager shouted in anger. The child forgot within hours, but the mother replays it for weeks, letting the words echo in her mind. A neighbor makes a careless remark at a community gathering. The conversation moves on, but one person clings to it, turning it into a story of betrayal that poisons the relationship. In each of these, the woman has already been set down, but in the mind, she is still being carried. The Buddha's teaching is not about forgetting, but about freeing. Memory will remain, but suffering does not have to. Each time we notice ourselves carrying the weight of the past, we can pause and ask, why am I still holding this? Can I put it down now? The story of the two monks reminds us that life often places burdens in our hands, but suffering comes from how long we choose to carry them. Here are some gentle practices to help lighten the load. The pause practice. When you notice your mind replaying an old hurt, pause. Take 3 slow breaths. Imagine yourself setting down a heavy bag you've been carrying. Whisper, "This moment has already passed. I can put it down." 2. Compassionate reframing. Ask yourself, could their action have come from pain, ignorance, or confusion? Often, remembering that others suffer too allows us to release judgment more easily. The letting go journal. Write down the situation you keep replaying. Describe it fully, then close your notebook and say, "I leave this here." Returning to the page later often reveals how much lighter you feel. Practice presence. Engage your senses. Feel your feet on the ground. Listen to surrounding sounds. Notice the breath. Presence is the antidote to carrying the past. The younger monk carried the woman for miles, long after she was gone. We do the same with grudges, regrets, and unkind words. The lesson is simple yet transformative. Compassion acts, but attachment clings. By putting things down when they are finished, we protect the mind from unnecessary weight. This does not mean ignoring responsibilities or forgetting lessons. It means refusing to drag the past endlessly into the present. Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the strength to walk freely, without being chained to yesterday. Think of one burden you are still carrying. A harsh word, a disappointment, a failure. Ask yourself, am I still holding her on my shoulders? Then breathe deeply and imagine setting that burden down by the riverbank. With each step forward, remind yourself, I do not need to carry this anymore. The monk's story shows us the cost of holding on too long. To release is to walk lighter, but release also requires silence, a stillness that allows wisdom to rise. Our next story is about learning to hear the quiet, the subtle, the overlooked. It is the teaching of the cricket in the temple. A Zen master once led his students to a large ancient temple. The hall was vast and echoing, filled with statues and incense smoke. The students expected to hear chants or bells, but the master simply asked them to sit quietly. Minutes passed in silence. The students fidgeted, their minds restless. Then the master smiled and whispered, "Listen." At first, all they heard was the beating of their own hearts, the shuffle of robes, the cough of a classmate. But as the silence deepened, a faint sound emerged, the steady, gentle chirping of a cricket hidden somewhere in the temple. The students looked around, surprised. They had been in the temple for hours and never noticed it before. The master nodded. The wisdom of life is like this cricket. It is always here, but you must quiet your mind to hear it. This story points to the practice of mindfulness and inner stillness. In Buddhism, the mind is often compared to a pond. When the surface is disturbed, it cannot reflect clearly, but when the water is calm, the reflection is perfect. The cricket's song represents the subtle truths of life, the wisdom that whispers beneath the noise of the world. Most of us never hear it because our minds are filled with chatter, plans, worries, regrets, endless distractions. The Buddha taught that mindfulness, sati, is the path to clarity. By observing the breath, the body, the feelings, and the thoughts, we quiet the noise and begin to hear what was always there. In our modern world, silence is rare. Phones buzz with notifications, televisions run in the background, and social media fills every pause. We crave stimulation, and in that craving, we lose touch with the subtler rhythms of life. A student studies with music blasting, text buzzing, and 10 tabs open on their laptop. Their brain is full, but their understanding is shallow. Only in quiet can deep learning take root. A parent rushes between work and home, multitasking constantly. Yet the child's soft question, "Will you play with me?" is barely heard. The cricket of love sings, but the noise of busyness drowns it out. Even in moments of rest, many of us reach for our phones. We scroll endlessly, avoiding silence. But wisdom waits in stillness, not in noise. The cricket teaches us that life's most important truths rarely shout. They whisper, and to hear them, we must quiet our minds and make space for silence. In today's world, silence feels almost unnatural. Many of us run from it without even realizing. The first mistake is filling every gap with noise. We turn on the TV while cooking, play music while studying, scroll our phones while waiting in line. Silence makes us uneasy, so we smother it with sound. The second mistake is confusing distraction with rest. We believe watching endless videos or scrolling through social media relaxes us, but instead of calming the mind, it agitates it even more. Rest is not about more noise, it is about stillness. The third mistake is believing wisdom must arrive dramatically. We expect truth to come like thunder with a flash of revelation. But real insight often comes like the cricket in the temple, soft, steady, easily overlooked. If we wait only for fireworks, we miss the quiet lanterns lighting our path each day. The Buddha often emphasized right mindfulness, samasati, one step of the Noble Eightfold Path. Mindfulness means noticing what is already present. Your breath, your body, your thoughts, without judgment. It is the practice of listening deeply, both to yourself and the world around you. In meditation, silence is not the absence of sound, but the absence of struggle. The chirp of the cricket, the hum of the city, even the beating of your own heart can become gateways to presence. When we are mindful, every sound becomes the teacher. This story also reflects dependent origination, pratyasamutpada. The cricket's song was always there, but the conditions for hearing it, stillness, attention, presence, had to be created. Wisdom too depends on conditions. By cultivating mindfulness, we create the space for insight to emerge. A student in Los Angeles spends hours every night watching TikTok. They laugh, they scroll, but afterward they feel empty. Only when they pause, put down the phone, and sit in silence do they notice their own thoughts and dreams emerging. A worker in Chicago listens to podcasts from morning until night. One day, the car battery dies, leaving him in unexpected silence during the commute. At first, he feels restless, but then He notices the sunrise, the rhythm of his breath, and a sense of peace he had forgotten. A mother in Texas rushes between tasks all day. One evening, she sits quietly on the porch. In the silence, she hears crickets, wind in the trees, and the laughter of children playing. Tears come, not from sadness, but from remembering what truly matters. The cricket in the temple reminds us, wisdom is not absent. We are simply too noisy to hear it. The task is not to search harder, but to listen more softly. The sound of the cricket is always present, but most of us are too distracted to notice. Here are some gentle practices to train the ear of the heart. Daily silence. Set aside 5 minutes each day with no phone, no music, no conversation. Sit quietly and simply listen. At first, you may hear only restlessness, but with time, subtler sounds and subtler wisdom emerge. Mindful listening. When someone speaks, practice hearing not only their words, but also the emotion beneath them. The cricket may be the sadness hidden behind their anger, or the longing behind their silence. Nature meditation. Step outside, even in a city. Close your eyes and notice layers of sound, traffic, birds, the wind. Listen without judgment. Everything becomes part of the temple, and every sound a cricket teaching patience and presence. Tech Sabbath. Try one evening each week without screens. Notice how the absence of digital noise creates space for inner quiet. Many people rediscover creativity, gratitude, and even forgotten dreams in these pauses. The cricket in the temple whispers a profound truth. Wisdom rarely shouts. It whispers beneath the noise. Our suffering often comes not from lack of answers, but from too much noise drowning them out. By cultivating silence, we discover that peace, clarity, and compassion were always within reach. When we practice listening with a still heart, we hear not only the cricket, we hear ourselves. And in hearing ourselves, we hear the pulse of all life around us. Think back on your day. How many small crickets sang to you unnoticed? The smile of a stranger, the rustle of leaves, a child's question, your own breath. What would change if you slowed down enough to hear them? The gift of the cricket is simple. Stop running, stop filling the air, and begin to listen. Silence opens the ear of wisdom. But presence also means focusing completely on what you do, without distraction. The next story takes us from listening to aiming, from hearing a cricket in the temple to watching a master archer, whose every shot reveals the power of full attention. This is the story of the master archer. There was once a master archer whose skill was legendary. His arrows never missed their mark. Crowds gathered to watch him, amazed at his steady hand and piercing aim. One day, a curious monk approached and asked, "What is the secret to your mastery?" The archer replied, "When I shoot, there is no archer, no bow, no arrow, and no target. There is only the act itself." The monk smiled, for he recognized this as a teaching of the Buddha. When the self disappears, pure presence arises. In that state, effort becomes effortless, and action becomes art. This story reflects the practice of mindfulness and non-self, anatta. When we cling to ego, we become anxious. Will I succeed? Will I fail? What will people think of me? These thoughts cloud the mind and shake the hand. But when we let go of ego, attention rests fully in the present moment. The archer's arrow flies straight, not because he tries harder, but because he is fully there, with no self to get in the way. The Buddha taught this in the practice of right concentration, samma samadhi. When the mind is collected and calm, actions flow naturally. The bow, the arrow, and the archer become one. An athlete at the peak of their game often describes being in the zone. time slows, distractions vanish, and the body moves with precision. This is not magic, it is deep presence. A musician plays not by thinking of each note, but by dissolving into the song. Their hands move freely, guided by years of practice and a mind fully immersed in the moment. Even in simple tasks, washing dishes, cooking a meal, writing an email, when we do them with full attention, they become smoother, lighter, almost effortless. The Master Archer reminds us, true mastery is not about control, but about surrender. It is not about adding more effort, but about removing the self that complicates the moment. When we are scattered, our arrows miss. When we are present, every breath, every step, every action finds its mark. Most of us long to excel, but in chasing mastery, we often stumble into traps. The first mistake is overthinking every step. Instead of being present, we micromanage ourselves. Is my posture right? Am I doing this perfectly? What will people think? The constant commentary makes our hands shake, just as surely as it would for the archer. The second mistake is clinging to results. We focus only on hitting the target, winning the game, getting the promotion, receiving the applause. But the archer's wisdom shows us, mastery arises not from chasing outcomes, but from being fully present in the act itself. The third mistake is letting ego drive the bow. We want to prove ourselves. We want others to see us succeed. Yet the more we try to inflate the self, the less steady we become. Ego adds weight to every action, pulling our aim off balance. In Buddhism, this is connected to right mindfulness, samasati, and right concentration, samasamadhi. The archer teaches us that when attention is steady and ego dissolves, action flows naturally. This also relates to the concept of flow that psychologists describe today, a state where the self disappears and the task becomes effortless. Athletes, artists, and meditators all know this state. The Buddha spoke of it as the fruit of deep presence. When the mind is one-pointed, distractions vanish, and life itself becomes the target. The practice of mindfulness invites us to let go of the noise of me and mine, so that what remains is simple awareness. Like the Master Archer, when we align with this awareness, the arrow of our life flies straight. A young professional in San Francisco prepares a big presentation. Nervous, she rehearses every gesture, overthinks every slide. But when she takes a breath, lets go of self-consciousness, and simply speaks from her heart, the presentation flows naturally. A chef in New Orleans rushes through dinner service, juggling multiple orders. At first, mistakes pile up, but then he remembers to slow down, focus fully on one dish at a time, and suddenly, everything falls into rhythm. A college student in Boston practices piano. When she focuses only on avoiding mistakes, she stumbles. But when she lets go of fear, closes her eyes, and merges with the music, the melody carries her. These are moments of the archer's wisdom, where mastery is less about control and more about release. The mind that overthinks misses the mark. The mind that clings grows heavy, but the mind that is steady, calm, and free of ego, this mind hits the target without effort. The Master Archer shows us that true skill comes not from forcing, but from presence. Here are some gentle practices to bring this wisdom into daily life. Single tasking. Choose one activity, washing dishes, writing an email, or eating a meal. Do it with full attention, without dividing your focus. Notice how simple acts become smoother when done with presence. Breath as an anchor. Before starting any task, take 3 mindful breaths. Feel the inhale and the exhale. Just as the archer steadies his hand before releasing the arrow, steady your mind before beginning. Release outcomes. In your work or practice, Shift the focus from "will this succeed" to "am I fully here?" Mastery is found in the quality of attention, not in the applause of others. Flow practice. Engage in an activity you enjoy: painting, running, playing music. Notice the moments when time disappears and only the act remains. These are glimpses of the archer's state, when self and action merge. The story of the master archer teaches us a paradox. The more we cling to control, the more we miss. But when we release ego, when we let presence guide us, life itself finds the target. The arrow does not fly straight because of willpower, but because the archer has disappeared into the act. We too can live this way. Each step, each word, each breath can be steady and true when the mind is free of distraction and pride. Think of something you are striving to master right now: a skill, a relationship, a personal goal. Ask yourself, am I overthinking, clinging, or trying to prove myself? Then gently redirect. What if I simply showed up fully here and now? The archer's wisdom is available to us not only in great achievements, but in the smallest tasks. Presence turns ordinary moments into arrows that fly straight into peace. From the archer, we learn that mastery comes from presence, but life is not always smooth and steady. Sometimes we face obstacles so heavy they seem immovable. The next story reminds us that wisdom is not always about breaking through barriers, but about seeing them differently. It is the teaching of the heavy stone. Two monks once walked along a mountain path. The air was crisp and the trail wound upward, leading toward their monastery. Suddenly, they came upon a huge stone lying across the path. It was massive, blocking the way forward. The younger monk groaned. "This stone is in the way. We cannot continue unless we move it." He pushed with all his strength, straining and sweating, but the stone would not budge. Frustrated, he kicked it, only hurting his foot. The older monk watched quietly. Then he smiled and stepped calmly around the stone, continuing on the path. Turning back, he said gently, "Not every obstacle must be moved. Some are simply walked around." This story reveals a profound teaching of the Buddha. Not all suffering needs to be conquered head-on. Some can be eased by changing perspective. The younger monk believed only brute force would solve the problem. His mind was fixed on control. But the older monk embodied wisdom. He saw options where the other saw only walls. The Buddha often taught about skillful means, upaya. Life will place heavy stones in our way. Failures, illnesses, disappointments. Some can be lifted with effort, others cannot. Wisdom lies in discerning the difference and in finding new paths rather than exhausting ourselves against immovable walls. This is also connected to the teaching of dukkha, life's unsatisfactoriness. Struggling against what cannot be changed multiplies suffering, but accepting reality and adapting to it opens freedom. At work, a project fails despite months of preparation. One person keeps fighting, blaming, and resisting reality, burning out in the process. Another accepts the failure, learns the lesson, and moves forward with fresh energy. The heavy stone could not be moved, but it could be walked around. In health, a person faces chronic illness. At first, they exhaust themselves trying to defeat it completely. But eventually, they discover ways to live fully with the condition, adapting diet, slowing pace, finding joy in new rhythms. The stone remains, but life continues. In relationships, not every conflict can be resolved by forcing the other to change. Sometimes wisdom is in stepping aside, choosing compassion, or setting boundaries. The obstacle doesn't disappear, but the path remains open. The heavy stone is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is the teacher, showing us that flexibility is stronger than force. When life places a heavy stone in our path, most of us respond like the younger monk. We push, strain, and exhaust ourselves, often without progress. Why? Because of several common mistakes. Believing every problem must be solved by force. We assume that the only path forward is to move the stone directly, but sometimes the wiser path is to adapt, shift direction, or step around it. Clinging to how things should be. The younger monk thought the path must always be clear. In the same way, we think our careers, relationships, or health should unfold without obstacles. When reality differs, we resist, increasing our suffering. Mistaking effort for wisdom. Working harder is not always working smarter. We admire persistence, but without insight, persistence becomes stubbornness, and stubbornness becomes suffering. The Buddha often emphasized panya, wisdom, as the guide for action. Effort, virya, is important, but without wisdom it is blind. The heavy stone reminds us that not all problems are meant to be conquered. Some are meant to be understood, accepted, or bypassed. This also reflects the teaching of impermanence, anicca. Even the heaviest stones shift with time. Mountains crumble, rivers carve valleys. What seems immovable today may soften tomorrow. Patience, alongside effort, is part of wisdom. And there is the lesson of non-attachment, anatta. Often, it is not the stone itself that causes pain, but our attachment to the belief that it must move. When we release that attachment, space opens for creativity and peace. A college student dreams of medical school but struggles with science courses. At first, she pushes endlessly, burning out. Later, she realizes her gift is in counseling and psychology. By stepping around the stone, she finds a fulfilling path aligned with her strengths. A businessman in New York fights tirelessly to save a failing company. He loses sleep, health, and relationships. Years later, he admits that letting go earlier would have spared suffering and allowed him to start anew. A woman faces infertility. For years, she forces treatments, enduring heartbreak. Eventually, she and her partner adopt a child, discovering joy and love they never imagined. The stone of infertility remained, but life found another way. Obstacles are not punishments. They are part of the path. The question is not always, how do I remove this stone? But sometimes, what can this stone teach me? The heavy stone reminds us, wisdom is not only the strength to push, but also the clarity to step aside when needed. Obstacles will always appear on life's path. Some must be carried, some can be moved, and some must simply be walked around. Here are gentle practices to help face them with clarity. Pause before reacting. When confronted with a stone, resist the urge to push immediately. Take 3 slow breaths. Ask yourself, is this stone to be moved or simply stepped around? 2. Shift perspective. Write down the obstacle and then list at least 3 alternative ways to approach it. Often, fresh perspectives appear once we stop fixating on a single solution. Practice acceptance. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means recognizing reality as it is, without wasting energy in denial. From acceptance, new paths open. Use obstacles as teachers. Each stone has a lesson: patience, resilience, humility, creativity. Reflect. What is this stone teaching me? The heavy stone reminds us, suffering often comes not from the obstacle itself, but from how we relate to it. When we resist what cannot be changed, we suffer twice, once from the stone and once from our own struggle. When we learn to step around, we conserve energy for the path ahead. This does not mean avoiding responsibility. Some stones must be moved, but wisdom helps us see clearly which require effort and which require release. True strength is not measured only in muscle, but in discernment. The older monk was not lazy, he was free. Think of a current obstacle in your life. Is it something you must lift with effort, or something you can simply walk around? How much suffering comes from the stone itself, and how much from your resistance to it? The next time you face such a challenge, pause and remember the monks on the mountain path. Sometimes the way forward is not to fight harder, but to step lightly. The stone reminds us that wisdom often lies in perspective, but to see clearly, we must also empty ourselves of pride and preconceptions. The next story is about a scholar who came to learn from a Zen master, only to discover that his cup was already too full. This is the story of the empty cup. A learned scholar once traveled a long distance to visit a Zen master. He had read countless books, debated many teachers, and considered himself deeply knowledgeable. Yet he longed for the final piece of wisdom he believed would complete his understanding. When he arrived, he bowed politely and said, "Master, I have come to learn from you. Please, teach me the way of Zen." The master smiled and invited him to sit for tea. As they talked, the scholar proudly shared his knowledge, scriptures he had studied, arguments he had won, insights he had gathered. The master listened quietly, then began to pour tea into the scholar's cup. The cup filled quickly, yet the master kept pouring. Soon the tea overflowed, spilling onto the table and dripping to the floor. Shocked, the scholar cried out, "Stop! The cup is full. No more can go in." The master placed the teapot down and said gently, "Exactly. Like this cup, your mind is full. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story illustrates the teaching of beginner's mind, Shoshin, and the importance of humility in learning. In Buddhism, clinging to knowledge is another form of attachment. Knowledge is useful, but when it hardens into pride, it becomes an obstacle. The scholar came seeking wisdom, but his arrogance left no room for insight. The Buddha often spoke of emptiness, shunyata, not as nothingness, but as openness. An empty mind is receptive, flexible, ready to be filled with fresh understanding. A full mind, crowded with ego and certainty, cannot receive new truth. The empty cup is not a rejection of learning, but a reminder. Wisdom flows only into a vessel that is open. A student enters college, believing they already know everything from high school. Their pride blocks them from hearing new ideas. Only when they admit they don't know do they begin to truly learn. A professional attends a training workshop, but spends the entire time proving how much they already know. In the end, they miss valuable lessons that could have helped them grow. Even in relationships, a full cup appears. When one partner listens only to reply, convinced they already understand, real communication cannot happen. But when they listen with openness, deeper connection blossoms. The empty cup is a call to humility. To learn, we must first admit we do not know. To grow, we must first create space. Like the scholar in the story, many of us carry minds too full to receive wisdom. The first mistake is pride in knowledge. We cling to diplomas, job titles, and experience as proof that we already know. But the moment we believe we know everything, we close the door to learning. The second mistake is listening only to reply. Instead of hearing another's perspective, we prepare our counter-argument. The conversation becomes a contest rather than an exchange. The cup is too full of our own voice to receive another's. The third mistake is confusing information with wisdom. We can memorize books, quotes, and data, but still lack understanding of how to live with compassion and peace. Knowledge fills the mind. Wisdom transforms the heart. The Buddha warned against clinging not only to material possessions, but also to views. He called rigid views a kind of fetters, chains that bind us. When we insist, "My way is right, my understanding is complete," we trap ourselves. The teaching of non-self, anatta, also applies here. When we identify too strongly with our knowledge, "I am a scholar, I am an expert, I am superior," we inflate the ego. But the Dharma reminds us, the self we cling to is empty, ever-changing. To hold tightly to ego is to block the flow of truth. An empty cup is not ignorance. It is openness. It says, "I am ready to be filled." I am ready to be surprised. I am ready to be wrong. This is humility, and humility is the soil where wisdom grows. A seasoned executive resists feedback from younger employees, convinced experience alone makes him right. His cup is full of pride, so innovation passes him by. A teenager dismisses a parent's advice, thinking, "You don't understand my world." But in closing the door, they miss wisdom earned through decades of living. A spiritual seeker attends retreat after retreat, but insists on comparing teachers and teachings. This one is wrong. That one is better. Their constant judgment leaves no room for genuine awakening. Contrast this with the beginner's mind of a child, curious, open, unafraid to ask questions. Children drink deeply from the world because their cups are still empty. Ask yourself, where is my cup too full? Is it in your work, where pride keeps you from learning? Is it in relationships, where assumptions block deeper understanding? Or is it in your spiritual practice, where certainty closes the path to growth? The empty cup invites us to pour out arrogance and make space for humility. In that space, wisdom can enter. The empty cup is not about throwing away knowledge, but about creating space for wisdom. Here are a few ways we can practice this in daily life. Beginner's mind practice. Before starting any task, whether cooking, working, or even meeting someone new, pause and say silently, "I will approach this as if for the first time." This helps loosen assumptions and open the heart to discovery. Listening without reply. In your next conversation, try listening fully without planning a response. Notice how much more deeply you understand when you stop rehearsing your counterpoint. Unlearning ritual. Once a week, reflect on one belief or habit you hold tightly. Ask yourself, is this still serving me? Could I set it down? Emptying is not loss, it is making space for renewal. Humility check. When praised for your knowledge or skill, practice saying, "I am still learning." This gentle reminder keeps the cup open, no matter how much you know. The scholar's overflowing cup teaches us we cannot receive with hands already clenched. The mind too full of ego has no space for truth. True wisdom grows not in certainty, but in humility. When we empty our cup, we allow life to pour itself in. Fresh insights, unexpected lessons, quiet revelations. An empty cup does not mean emptiness of value. It means readiness. It is the posture of the heart that says, "I am open." Think of one area in your life where you feel most certain. Your job, your relationships, your beliefs. Ask yourself, is my cup too full here? What might I miss because I think I already know? Then, for one day, practice emptying. Approach with curiosity. Listen more than you speak. Watch how the world fills your cup with new colors when you make space. The empty cup invites us into humility and openness. But sometimes humility is tested not in silence, but in confrontation. The next story tells of a fierce samurai who challenged a Zen master at the gates of his temple, demanding to know the difference between heaven and hell. This is the teaching of the samurai at the gate. A long time ago, a fierce samurai warrior came to visit a Zen master. His armor gleamed, his sword shone, and his presence made villagers tremble. Yet despite his strength, he carried a question that haunted him. Approaching the temple gates, he bowed stiffly and asked, "Master, teach me about heaven and hell. I want to know the truth." The Zen master looked him up and down, then burst into laughter. "You, a samurai? You look more like a beggar in armor. Your sword is dull, your spirit weak. What makes you think you deserve to learn about heaven and hell?" The samurai's face turned red with fury. His hand gripped the hilt of his sword. Rage boiled inside him, and he raised the blade high above his head, ready to strike. In that moment, the master said calmly, This is hell. Shocked, the samurai froze. His eyes widened. Slowly, he lowered the sword, realizing what the master had done. His anger melted into humility and tears filled his eyes. He bowed deeply, overwhelmed by gratitude. The master smiled gently and said, "And this is heaven." This story cuts straight to the heart of Buddhist teaching. Heaven and hell are not distant places. They are states of mind. When anger, hatred, and pride dominate us, we are already in hell, even while alive. When compassion, gratitude, and clarity fill our hearts, we are in heaven, here and now. The master did not answer with theory. He showed the samurai directly, transforming his emotions into a living lesson. This also reflects the teaching of mindfulness of mind states. By observing how emotions shape our world, we see that peace or torment arises not from outside, but from within. At work, a person consumed by resentment feels trapped, even if they sit in a comfortable office. That is hell. Another, filled with gratitude despite challenges, feels at peace. That is heaven. In relationships, constant suspicion and anger create misery, even in a beautiful home. Meanwhile, kindness and forgiveness create harmony, even in modest surroundings. Even in our own minds, a single insult can create hours of hell, while a single moment of kindness can create hours of heaven. The samurai's lesson is clear. Heaven and hell are not somewhere else. They live in every choice, every reaction, every breath. Like the samurai, many of us misunderstand heaven and hell. The first mistake is believing they are only places after death. Some imagine a paradise or a fiery pit far away in time and space. But the story reminds us, heaven and hell begin here in the mind in this very moment. The second mistake is thinking external conditions alone determine happiness. We tell ourselves, if I have more money, I'll be in heaven. If I lose my job, that's hell. Yet countless examples prove otherwise. People with little live in joy, while others with riches live in misery. The third mistake is letting anger dictate our reality. The samurai nearly killed out of rage. For that moment he was in hell. The master showed him how quickly the mind can transform. When anger dissolves into humility, hell becomes heaven instantly. The Buddha often explained that mind precedes all things. In the Dhammapada, he says, if with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows like the wheel of the cart follows the ox that pulls it. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves. Heaven and hell are not gifts or punishments handed down by an external judge. They are the natural fruit of our mind states and actions. This is also tied to the teaching of karma. Each thought, word, and deed plants seeds. Anger plants seeds of suffering. Compassion plants seeds of peace. We live in the garden we cultivate. A commuter stuck in traffic fumes with frustration, honking and shouting. For him, the car becomes a prison of hell. Another commuter, listening to calming music or practicing deep breathing, turns the same traffic into a pocket of peace, a small heaven. In a family, one sibling clings to resentment over an old argument, poisoning every interaction. Another chooses forgiveness and enjoys warmth at every gathering. The same household holds both heaven and hell, depending on the heart. In schools, a student obsessed with competition feels constant stress. Another, who studies with curiosity and joy, experiences learning as freedom. The difference is not the classroom, it is the state of mind. The samurai's lesson reveals how quickly the gate swings between heaven and hell. One moment of rage is torment. One breath of humility is liberation. This truth frees us. We no longer need to wait for paradise, nor fear eternal punishment. We can create heaven here and now by nurturing kindness, mindfulness, and compassion. The master showed the samurai that heaven and hell are only a breath apart. We too can train ourselves to notice this truth in daily life. Here are some practices. Mindful pause. When anger rises, pause before reacting. Place your hand on your heart, breathe deeply, and silently say, "This is hell. I can choose another path." This small awareness can turn the fire into clarity. Compassionate reframe. Ask yourself, what pain is behind this person's anger? Seeing others through the lens of compassion transforms judgment into understanding. In that shift, the gates of heaven open. Daily gratitude. Each evening, write down 3 moments of kindness or beauty you noticed that day. Gratitude trains the heart to dwell in heaven, even in ordinary surroundings. Forgiveness practice. Recall one resentment you still carry. Imagine it as a burning coal in your hand. Visualize yourself setting it down. Forgiveness is not excusing. It is choosing not to live in hell any longer. The samurai came seeking distant truths, but discovered that heaven and hell are not far away. They are the landscapes of the mind. Anger, pride, and hatred build walls of fire around us. Humility, gratitude, and compassion open gates of light. The difference is not in the world outside, it is in the heart inside. This lesson is empowering. We are not victims of fate, waiting for judgment. We are creators of our reality, moment by moment. Pause and reflect. Where is your hell right now? Is it in an unresolved conflict, an unhealed wound, or a restless mind? And where is your heaven? Perhaps in the smile of a loved one, a breath of calm, or a small act of kindness. The gates stand before us always, swinging on the hinge of each choice. Which one will you walk through today? The samurai's sword revealed the truth of heaven and hell in a single moment. From this fierce scene, we now turn to a gentler story, one that teaches patience, resilience, and the quiet power of time. It is the story of the bamboo cutter. Long ago, in a quiet village, a man made his living cutting bamboo. Each morning, he rose early, walked into the forest, and began his work. But the bamboo was stubborn. Some stalks were thick, some tangled, and cutting them felt endless. Frustrated, the man once complained, "Why must this work be so hard? The bamboo resists me at every step." An elder nearby overheard and said gently, "Bamboo teaches patience. If you rush, you break your blade. If you strike wildly, you wound yourself. But if you steady your hand and cut with rhythm, the stalks yield in time." The man listened. Slowly, he learned to breathe with the forest, moving in harmony. What once felt like endless struggle became a quiet meditation. Each stroke of the blade became steady, calm, almost musical. This story is a lesson in perseverance and patience, kshanti. In Buddhist teaching, patience is not passive. It is active strength. The ability to remain steady when life feels slow, repetitive, or difficult. The bamboo cutter's frustration mirrors our own when we demand quick results. We live in a culture of instant gratification. Instant meals, instant messages, instant success. But true growth is bamboo-like, slow, steady, unfolding in its own season. The Buddha often compared practice to tending a garden. You cannot force a seed to sprout by pulling on it. You water, you wait, you care, and one day it blooms. In the same way, bamboo yields only to rhythm, not to rage. A student studies for months for an exam. At first, progress feels invisible, but with patient effort, knowledge takes root. One day, the concepts that once felt impossible suddenly become clear. An athlete trains day after day, repeating the same drills. It feels tedious, but over time, their body grows stronger, their skills sharper. In relationships, trust is bamboo-like. It cannot be built overnight. It grows slowly through consistent care, honesty, and presence. The bamboo cutter's lesson reminds us, what feels heavy today may one day become graceful if we walk with patience. Impatience is its own suffering. When we rush, we break ourselves against life's natural rhythm. But when we move steadily, in harmony with time, even hard work becomes meditation. Most of us, like the young bamboo cutter, stumble when life demands patience. The first mistake is believing progress should always be visible. We expect instant results. Learning a skill in days, healing overnight, success without delay. When growth hides beneath the surface, we assume nothing is happening and give up too soon. The second mistake is mistaking patience for weakness. In our fast-paced culture, patience is often mocked. Why wait? Why not force it? But in truth, patience is strength. It is the ability to endure without breaking, to hold steady when others collapse. The third mistake is fighting against the rhythm of life. We push harder, rush faster, and resist every delay. But like the young cutter hacking wildly at bamboo, our lack of rhythm dulls our blade and wounds our spirit. The Buddha described patience, ksanti, as one of the paramitas, or perfections, qualities that carry us across the shore of suffering. Patience is not passive waiting. It is an active embrace of reality as it is, without resentment. This teaching also ties to impermanence, anicca. All things unfold in time. Just as bamboo grows in its season, so too do our efforts bear fruit when conditions ripen. Forcing before the right time only creates frustration. Patience is also closely linked to compassion. To be patient with others is to recognize their struggles. To be patient with ourselves is to forgive our own imperfections. Without patience, compassion collapses. A new business owner in New York expects instant profit. When months pass with little return, he panics. Another owner accepts the slow growth, adapts patiently, and builds a foundation that lasts decades. A young couple argues constantly, wanting instant harmony, but real intimacy requires patience, time to listen, to understand, to heal. A person trying meditation expects immediate peace. Instead, their mind runs wild. With patience, they learn that even restlessness is part of the practice. Slowly, calm arises. Impatience is like hacking wildly at bamboo. It makes the task harder. Patience, steady and rhythmic, turns struggle into harmony. The bamboo cutter's lesson is this: strength is not in force, but in rhythm. Growth does not shout. It unfolds quietly, in its own time. Patience is not something we are born with. It is something we can practice. Like the bamboo cutter learning to steady his blade. Here are a few gentle ways. Breath rhythm. When frustration rises, focus on your breath. Match your inhale and exhale to a slow count. Like the rhythm of cutting bamboo. This simple act trains the body and mind to move in harmony. Small steps practice. Choose a task that requires repetition. Gardening, practicing an instrument, even folding laundry. Instead of rushing, do it slowly and steadily. Notice how patience makes the task lighter. Reframe delays. The next time you wait in traffic or in line instead of fuming, treat it as practice. Ask, how can this moment train my patience? Waiting becomes less an obstacle, more a teacher. Compassionate patience. When someone frustrates you, pause and silently say, like me, they are learning. Like me, they are human. Patience toward others softens the heart. The bamboo cutter's journey reminds us, life unfolds in rhythm, not in haste. When we rush, we dull our blade against the world. When we move steadily, we find that even hard work becomes a form of meditation. Patience is not weakness. It is quiet strength. It allows us to endure without breaking, to grow without forcing, and to love without demanding perfection. The elder's wisdom still echoes. If you strike wildly, you wound yourself. But if you steady your hand, the bamboo yields in time. Think of one area of your life right now that demands patience. Maybe it's your career, a relationship, or your own healing. Ask, am I hacking wildly or am I moving with rhythm? Each day, practice steady effort, not desperate struggle. In time, you will find the bamboo yielding, the path clearing, the heart softening. The bamboo cutter shows us that patience transforms labor into meditation. But patience also reveals beauty, sometimes so delicate it cannot be grasped, only reflected. Our next story is about the moon, shimmering not in the sky alone, but also in the still water below. It is the teaching of the moon in the water. One evening, a young monk walked with his teacher along the edge of a still pond. The night sky stretched above them, clear and vast, with the full moon glowing softly. The monk paused, pointing to the reflection in the water. "Master, look, the moon is in the pond." The teacher smiled gently. "Yes, it appears so, but remember, the moon has never left the sky. What you see in the water is only a reflection." The monk gazed longer at the shimmering image. Each ripple in the pond bent and distorted the moon's light. With a breeze, the moon seemed to break apart. With stillness, it appeared whole again. The master said, "So too with the mind. When it is disturbed, reality appears broken. When it is calm, truth reflects clearly. But whether the water ripples or rests, the moon itself remains untouched in the sky." This story reveals the heart of Buddhist teaching on mind and perception. The moon is truth, reality as it is. The water is our mind. When the mind is agitated with desire, anger, or fear, reality becomes distorted, just as ripples distort the moon's image. When the mind is calm through mindfulness, wisdom reflects clearly. The Buddha taught that suffering often arises not from reality itself, but from how we perceive it. A restless mind creates confusion. A still mind reveals clarity. This story also points to emptiness, shunyata. The reflection is not the moon, yet without it, we might not notice the moon at all. Appearances are not ultimate reality, but they guide us toward it. A student prepares for an exam. Anxiety fills their mind, making every question look impossible. But when they calm themselves with a few breaths, clarity returns and the answers appear. The exam did not change, only their mind did. A couple argues. In the heat of anger, every word feels like an attack. But when they step back, breathe and listen, they see love beneath the tension. The relationship was never broken. The ripples only hid its depth. A person scrolling social media believes their life is inadequate compared to others. Yet when they practice gratitude and mindfulness, they realize those reflections are not the whole truth. The moon remains untouched. The moon in the water reminds us, reality itself is steady and whole. It is our restless minds that distort it. When we learn to quiet the water, we see clearly again. The young monk mistook the reflection for the real moon. We too often confuse appearances with truth. The first mistake is believing the reflection is reality. We think the distorted image we see, our fears, assumptions, or emotions is the full truth, forgetting that reality itself remains untouched. The second mistake is reacting to ripples as if they changed the moon. When anger or anxiety disturbs our mind, we assume the world itself has changed. But just as the moon is not broken by rippling water, reality is not broken by our passing moods. The third mistake is chasing reflections instead of seeking the source. We spend our lives grasping at shadows, wealth, fame, approval, thinking they are solid. But reflections never last. The moon remains in the sky, far beyond our grasp, quietly shining whether we notice or not. The Buddha called this mistake ignorance, avidya. Ignorance is not simply lack of knowledge, it is misperception. It is mistaking the temporary for the eternal, the reflection for the source. This connects with right view, samaditthi, the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path. To see clearly, we must understand that perceptions are often colored by desire, fear, or delusion. Only by calming the mind can we reflect truthfully. The story also relates to dependent origination. The reflection exists only because of the moon, the water, and the conditions of stillness or disturbance. Likewise, our experiences arise from many conditions. When we forget this, we cling to illusions as if they were permanent. A person posts carefully curated photos on social media. Others see the reflection and assume their life is perfect. But behind the screen, they may be lonely or struggling. To mistake the image for reality is to chase the reflection, not the truth. In relationships, one harsh word can ripple the surface of the mind. We may think the love is broken, but often it is only the momentary wave of emotion. Beneath it, the moon of care remains. In politics or news, headlines are often like reflections on turbulent water, loud, distorted, incomplete. If we mistake them for the whole truth, we act out of fear or anger rather than wisdom. The reflection of the moon reminds us, life's appearances are not always reality. If we chase the ripples, we drown in illusion. But if we look up, we remember the true moon was never disturbed. The reflection of the moon teaches us that our mind shapes how we see reality. To train the mind for clarity, we can practice in simple ways. Mindful breathing. Each day, take a few minutes to sit quietly and follow the breath. Notice how thoughts ripple like water. As you breathe, the ripples settle. In stillness, truth becomes clearer. Reality check. When emotions run high, pause and ask, am I reacting to the moon or to the ripples? This question helps us see whether we're responding to reality or to a distorted reflection. Gratitude for the source. When enjoying something, a compliment, success, or beauty, remind yourself, this is a reflection of deeper causes and conditions. Gratitude keeps us from chasing shadows and helps us honor the source. Compassionate seeing. When someone acts harshly, recognize it as the ripple of their own suffering. Beneath the turbulence, their true nature, like the moon, remains untouched. This shifts judgment into compassion. The moon in the water reminds us, what we see is often a reflection, not the whole. Our moods distort reality, our perceptions create illusions, and our attachments keep us grasping at ripples. But the true moon, the essence of life, the steady truth, remains beyond disturbance. Clarity comes not from controlling the water, but from calming the mind. When the pond of the heart is still, truth shines effortlessly. Think of a recent moment when your mind was restless. How did it distort the moon of reality? Did anger make things appear worse than they were? Did desire make an illusion look solid? Now imagine looking up beyond the water to the real moon. Reality has always been there. Calm, steady, whole. The invitation is simple. Look deeper, beyond reflections, to what is true. The moon's reflection teaches us about perception and clarity, but Zen masters also used paradoxes to wake the mind, questions so sharp they cut through logic itself. Our next story is one of the most famous. A monk asked, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" This leads us to the teaching of the sound of one hand. A young monk once approached his Zen master with a question. "Master, what is the sound of two hands clapping?" The master replied, "That sound is easy to know." Then the monk bowed deeper and asked, "But master, What is the sound of one hand clapping? The master closed his eyes and said nothing. The silence stretched long. The monk grew restless, waiting for an explanation. But the master remained still, his face calm, his presence steady. Finally, the monk asked again, "Please tell me, what is the answer?" The master opened his eyes and said softly, "If I give you the answer, it will no longer be yours. Sit, breathe, and listen. Let the question itself become your teacher." This koan, or paradoxical riddle, is one of the most famous in Zen practice. Koans are not meant to be solved logically. They are meant to break the grip of ordinary thinking and open the mind to direct experience. The sound of one hand clapping cannot be explained in words. It must be realized in the heart. The point is not the answer, but the transformation that happens when the mind struggles, then lets go. The Buddha often taught that wisdom arises not from clever arguments, but from direct seeing, vipassana. Just as you cannot describe sweetness to someone who has never tasted honey, ultimate truth cannot be captured in logic. It must be experienced. A scientist can explain the physics of fire, but only someone who has felt its warmth knows what it truly means. A musician can describe music theory, but the experience of being carried by a melody goes beyond words. In relationships, we can list reasons why we love someone, but the actual feeling of love is beyond explanation. The koan reminds us that ultimate truths, love, peace, enlightenment, cannot be reduced to formulas. They must be lived. The sound of one hand is not a puzzle to solve. It is an invitation to step beyond words, beyond logic, into the silence where truth sings. When faced with a paradox like the sound of one hand, most of us fall into familiar traps. The first mistake is trying to solve it with logic alone. Our minds are trained to analyze, compare, and categorize. We believe every question must have a neat answer, but koans are designed to short-circuit this habit. The monk who demands a logical reply misses the point. The second mistake is grasping for someone else's answer. We read books, search online, or ask teachers, hoping for a solution to copy. But as the master said, "If I give you the answer, it will no longer be yours." Wisdom cannot be borrowed. It must be lived. The third mistake is treating the question as meaningless. Some dismiss koans as riddles or tricks, yet their purpose is profound: to open the gate to direct experience beyond ordinary thinking. The Buddha often warned against clinging to words and concepts. In one sutra, he compared his teachings to a finger pointing at the moon. The finger is not the moon, it only guides the way. If we stare at the finger, we miss the radiance above. Zen koans are like that finger. They point us beyond thought, towards silence and direct experience. This connects with the teaching of emptiness, shunyata. Just as the reflection of the moon is not the moon, words are not the truth. They are useful but temporary. Only by letting go of words can we touch reality. It also relates to non-attachment. When we cling to "I know" or "I must solve," the ego tightens its grip. The koan cracks that grip, leaving space for humility and openness. A student in philosophy class debates endlessly about the meaning of happiness. Yet, when she spends an afternoon playing with her little brother, she experiences happiness directly, without a definition. A group of co-workers analyze team spirit in meetings, but true team spirit arises not from words, but from shared laughter, support, and trust in action. A man seeks love advice through countless books and podcasts, but when he pauses and holds his partner's hand in silence, he discovers more truth than any words could offer. The sound of one hand reminds us, the deepest truths are not found in arguments, but in experience. When the mind demands, "What does this mean?" pause. Instead of chasing an answer, listen to the silence beneath the question. Sometimes silence itself is the reply. The koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping, is not a riddle to solve. It is a mirror to live with. Here are some gentle practices inspired by it. Sit with the question. In meditation, silently repeat the koan. What is the sound of one hand? Do not chase an answer. Let the question dissolve thoughts until only awareness remains. Practice silence. Spend a few minutes each day without speaking, reading, or listening to devices. Notice what arises in the stillness. Often, the sound of one hand is discovered in silence itself. Drop the need to know. When faced with uncertainty in life, instead of rushing for solutions, try resting in the unknown. This builds comfort with mystery and deepens trust in the present. Listen beyond words. In conversations, notice not only what people say, but what their tone, pauses, or silence communicate. Sometimes, the truth speaks most clearly in what is unspoken. The sound of one hand reminds us that truth is not always found in answers. It often lives in the space beyond them. Logic and language are tools, but they cannot capture the whole of reality. Just as music is more than notes on a page, life is more than explanations. The koan breaks open the walls of logic so we may step into direct experience. When the monk demanded an answer, the master remained silent. That silence was the teaching. Heaven, hell, love, peace. All of these are not things to define, but states to enter. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what is the sound of one hand? Notice how the mind races, then grows quiet. In that quiet, there may be no words, but there is presence, and presence is enough. The lesson is not to solve, but to live awake. To taste truth directly in each breath, each step, each heartbeat. The koan of one hand leads us into silence beyond words. Yet silence itself can be misunderstood. Words and teachings are only guides. They are not the truth itself. The next story reminds us, if we confuse the pointing finger for the moon, we miss the beauty of the sky. This is the teaching of the finger and the moon. One evening, a Zen master gathered his students outside beneath the night sky. The moon was full, glowing above the temple courtyard. The master raised his hand and pointed to it. "Look," he said, "the moon." The students followed his gesture, but one became fixated on the master's finger. He whispered to his neighbor, "What is the meaning of the finger? Why does the master hold it like that?" Another student, even more curious, began sketching the finger's shape in the dirt. Soon, several were debating what the finger symbolized. The master sighed and said, "Do not mistake the finger for the moon. My finger only points the way. If you stare at the finger, you miss the beauty of the moon itself." This simple story carries one of the most essential lessons of the Buddha's teaching. The moon represents truth and ultimate reality. The finger is the teachings, the scriptures, the practices. They point toward truth, but they are not truth itself. The Buddha himself once said, "My teaching is like a raft. Once you cross the river, you do not carry the raft on your back. You leave it behind." In the same way, teachings are tools, not possessions. The danger is clinging to the form instead of experiencing the essence, studying words without living them, debating doctrines while forgetting compassion, holding on to the finger while missing the moon. A student memorizes a sacred text perfectly, but never practices kindness. They stare at the finger, but miss the moon. A meditation app user becomes obsessed with tracking sessions and badges, forgetting that the point of meditation is presence, not numbers. A congregation argues over rituals, how to chant, what clothes to wear, while neglecting the heart of love and forgiveness. These are all fingers mistaken for the moon. The master's pointing finger is not the destination. The moon, the living truth of compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom, is what we must see. The story of the finger and the moon points to one of the most common traps on the spiritual path. The first mistake is clinging to words instead of experience. We may memorize scriptures, quote masters, or collect teachings, but if we stop at words, we miss the living truth they point toward. The second mistake is confusing form with essence. Rituals, ceremonies, and traditions can be beautiful, but if we obsess over getting the form right while forgetting the heart of compassion, the practice becomes hollow. The third mistake is treating the path as possession. Some believe, my tradition, my teacher, my method is the only way. They cling to the finger and look down on others. Yet the moon shines equally on all beings, regardless of which finger points to it. The Buddha himself warned against mistaking his words for ultimate truth. In the Alagaddupama Sutta, he compared teachings to a raft. The raft helps you cross the river, but once you reach the far shore, you don't carry it forever. You leave it behind. This relates to the teaching of non-attachment, anatta. When we cling to forms, whether books, rituals, or even meditation techniques, we create identity around them. I am the one who knows. I am right, but truth is not owned. It is experienced. It also echoes skillful means, upaya. Different teachings may look different. One finger points straight, another curves, but each is only a guide. Mistaking the method for the destination blinds us. A yoga student obsesses over perfect postures but forgets the deeper practice of union and peace. Their body moves, but their heart is restless. A person becomes addicted to self-help books, always seeking the next title, but never applying the lessons in daily life. The bookshelf fills, but the heart remains empty. A religious community fights over whether prayers should be sung or spoken. In their arguments, they miss the compassion those prayers were meant to inspire. In each case, the finger is mistaken for the moon. The pointing finger is useful, but only if it leads us to lift our eyes to the sky. The purpose of practice is transformation, not performance. The point of teachings is liberation, not pride. The true moon, peace, compassion, awakening needs no debate. It only needs to be lived. The Zen master's warning is timeless. Don't get lost in the finger. Look at the moon. Here are gentle practices to help us shift from form to essence, from reading to living. The next time you encounter a teaching, pause and ask, how can I live this in my daily life? Instead of underlining the words, practice embodying them, whether it's kindness, patience, or mindfulness. Ritual with heart. If you engage in prayer, chanting, or meditation, take a moment to reconnect with intention. Ask, am I doing this for appearance or to awaken compassion? Let the ritual be the doorway, not the destination. Letting go of rightness. Notice when you feel superior about your tradition, teacher, or method. Instead of clinging, whisper, this is a finger pointing me toward truth. Others may follow different fingers, and that's okay. Direct experience. Set aside time for silence in nature. Look at the moon, listen to the wind, or sit quietly by a tree. Without words, without doctrine, notice what wisdom arises. Sometimes the moon reveals itself when we stop searching for explanations. The finger and the moon remind us, teachings are guides, not treasures to possess. We suffer when we cling to words, rituals or identities as if they are the truth itself. But when we use them skillfully, they point us toward the living experience of peace and compassion. The moon shines whether we look up or not. The question is, are we too busy staring at the finger to notice? Think of one teaching, book, or practice you value. Ask yourself, am I staring at the finger or seeing the moon? Then take one small step to live the essence of that teaching. Through kindness to a stranger, patience in traffic, or gratitude for the present moment. When we live the truth, the moon reflects in every breath. The finger and the moon teach us to look beyond words and symbols to direct experience. But sometimes, even when we know where to look, the path feels uncertain, like searching for something precious we have lost. The next story is about a farmer who lost his ox and wandered in frustration, only to discover that the ox was never truly gone. This is the teaching of the lost ox. A farmer once discovered that his ox, the very animal he depended on for plowing his fields, was missing. Panic struck him. Without the ox, he could not till the soil, and without planting, there would be no harvest. He searched the hills, combed the valleys, and wandered into forests, calling the ox's name. His mind raced with worry. Perhaps it has been stolen. Perhaps it has wandered too far. What if I never find it again? Exhausted, the farmer sat by a stream to rest. As he gazed into the water, he saw muddy footprints leading along the bank. His heart leapt. He followed the tracks, step by step, until finally he found the ox grazing peacefully in a meadow not far from home. The farmer laughed with relief. All this time I thought I had lost you, yet you were here all along, never far away. This story points to one of the oldest metaphors in Zen, the 10 ox herding pictures. The ox represents the true nature of the self, the quiet, steady awareness within us. Losing the ox symbolizes forgetting our own true mind, getting lost in distractions, desires, and fears. We wander endlessly, seeking peace outside ourselves, yet the ox, the calm, awakened mind, was never gone. It only seemed lost because we were not paying attention. The Buddha taught that ignorance, avijja, blinds us to what is already here. Just as the farmer searched the hills while the ox grazed nearby, we search for happiness in possessions, achievements, or approval, while the peace we seek is already within. A young professional chases promotions, believing happiness lies in the next job title. But after years of striving, they realized joy was in simple moments, sharing a meal, walking in nature, that were always present. A parent works tirelessly to give their child a better future. In the rush, they forget to notice the child's laughter today. The lost ox of presence was grazing right beside them. A student searches endlessly for the perfect spiritual book or teacher, only to discover that meditation on their own breath reveals what was sought all along. The ox was never truly lost. Likewise, our true nature is never absent. We only need to pause, look closely, and follow the footprints of awareness back to ourselves. Like the farmer, most of us believe we've lost something essential and chase it desperately. The first mistake is seeking happiness only outside ourselves. We think the ox of peace lives in a new car, a bigger house, or the next vacation. Yet these things fade quickly, and the search begins again. The second mistake is believing the ox has truly disappeared. We assume peace is gone forever when life feels chaotic. But the truth is, awareness never leaves us. It only gets obscured by the dust of craving and fear. The third mistake is chasing endlessly without pausing. The farmer ran through valleys and forests, exhausting himself. In the same way, we rush from task to task, scrolling endlessly, overworking, overstimulating, never stopping long enough to notice the ox quietly grazing nearby. The Buddha described this restless search as samsara, the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. Each time we think, if I get this, I will be complete, we wander further into the forest of delusion. The teaching of mindfulness, sati, invites us to stop running and simply look. Just as the farmer finally noticed the ox's footprints by the stream, we too can notice the footprints of peace. Our breath, our body, the present moment. This also ties to non-self, anatta. The ox was never truly mine or lost, it simply is. In the same way, awareness is not something to possess, but something to recognize. We do not create peace, we uncover it. A teenager chases likes on social media, believing each notification proves their worth. Yet even with hundreds of likes, they still feel empty. The ox of self-worth was never in the phone. It was within. A man in Los Angeles works 80 hours a week, hoping money will bring peace. When he burns out, he discovers the joy of simply sitting with his daughter in the park. The ox was in presence, not profit. A woman suffering from anxiety believes peace will come only when every problem is solved. But through mindful breathing, she realizes the ox of calm was already grazing inside her breath, waiting to be noticed. The farmer's panic mirrors our own. We think, I've lost myself, I must search harder. But peace is not far, it is nearer than our own heartbeat. The footprints are everywhere, if we pause to see. The farmer's relief at finding the ox reminds us that peace was never far away. To recognize it in our own lives, we can practice. Follow the footprints. Just as the farmer noticed tracks by the stream, we can look for signs of awareness in daily life. The breath, the body, a moment of stillness. Each footprint points us back to presence. Stop running. Instead of rushing endlessly, set aside time each day to pause. Sit quietly. Notice your surroundings and breathe. Often the ox of calm emerges only when we stop chasing. Simplify the search. The farmer searched hills and forests, though the ox grazed nearby. Likewise, we complicate life with endless goals. Try asking, what is already here that I overlook? 4. Trust the ox. Even when we feel lost, our true nature remains. Trust that awareness, like the ox, will return to view when conditions are right. The ox was never truly gone. Our own true nature, peace, clarity, compassion is never absent. What is lost is only our awareness of it. We exhaust ourselves searching far and wide, while the treasure grazes quietly within. When we stop grasping and open our eyes, we discover what was here all along. The Buddha's teaching reminds us, enlightenment is not about becoming something else. It is about remembering what we already are. Ask yourself, what ox am I searching for right now? Is it happiness, worth, belonging? Then pause. Notice your breath, your body, this moment. The footprints are right here, leading back to yourself. The path is not about running harder, it is about seeing clearer. The farmer's joy in finding the ox teaches us that nothing essential is ever truly lost. But once the ox is found, what comes next? Zen masters describe a final stage, when even the ox disappears, leaving only openness. Think of the many times you have gone searching for the ox in your own life. You worked tirelessly, saving money to buy a new home, convinced that once you move in, peace will finally arrive. Yet when you stand inside the freshly painted walls, the sense of peace still feels incomplete. The truth is, peace never lived inside the bricks. It was always waiting inside your breath. You chase recognition, running after awards, degrees, or praise, believing that others' approval will prove your worth. And yet, one simple hug from a loved one often brings more lasting comfort than all the applause. You scroll endlessly through social media, looking for inspiration or distraction. But the more you scroll, the more restless you become. The ox of contentment has not run away. It has been quietly grazing inside the field of stillness. The farmer's frantic search reflects our modern habits. We look far away, when what we seek is already near. Many practitioners describe meditation in the same way. At the beginning, the mind seems wild, thoughts racing like a flock of birds. You feel certain you've lost the ox of calm. But when you stay, breathe, and allow the dust to settle, you begin to notice small footprints. The rise and fall of the breath, the steady rhythm of the body, the awareness that observes everything. Slowly, you realize the ox of peace was never missing. It was hidden beneath noise, but always present. The lesson is this: what we call losing the ox is not the ox disappearing. It is our attention drifting. Each moment we return to the breath, we return to the ox. The next story explores that mystery, the empty circle. In a Zen monastery, a master once drew a perfect circle on the ground. The disciples gathered, waiting for an explanation. One student asked, "Master, what does this circle mean? Is it enlightenment? Is it perfection? Is it emptiness?" The master looked at them and simply said, "It is just a circle." Silence filled the courtyard. Some disciples were confused, others frustrated, but a few smiled, sensing that the circle was pointing beyond words, beyond concepts. The empty circle has long been a symbol in Zen called Enso. It represents wholeness and emptiness, the paradox that everything is complete as it is, yet nothing can be grasped. Some circles are drawn open, showing that even emptiness is not separate from the world. Others are drawn closed, reflecting unity. The circle is not meant to be explained. It is meant to be seen. The empty circle embodies shunyata, emptiness. In Buddhism, emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means that all things lack a permanent, independent self. Everything exists in interdependence. Just as the circle has no beginning or end, life itself flows without fixed boundaries. The Buddha described reality as like a dream, a bubble, a reflection in water. The circle is a reminder that clinging to solid definitions blinds us. The truth cannot be held in concepts. It can only be lived. It also reflects non-duality. The circle contains everything: joy and sorrow, birth and death, gain and loss, inside and outside merge. To realize this is to see that our separations are illusions. A businesswoman in New York defines herself only by her career. When she loses her job, she feels shattered, as if her life has ended. Yet with time, she discovers creativity in painting and compassion in volunteering. The circle of life was always larger than her title. A teenager believes their identity is fixed by grades or social status. But as they grow, they see themselves changing, evolving, never confined. Like a circle, life cannot be pinned down to one point. In relationships, we often think, this love must last forever exactly as it is. When change comes, we suffer, but the circle reminds us that change is part of wholeness. The empty circle whispers, "You are already complete, yet you cannot be contained." To stare at it and demand a definition is to miss the point. To breathe with it, to live inside its openness, is to taste freedom. When people encounter the empty circle, they often fall into confusion. The first mistake is fearing emptiness as nothingness. Many think, if all is empty, then nothing matters. Life has no meaning. But emptiness in Buddhism does not deny meaning. It liberates us from clinging. It says, nothing exists on its own. Everything exists together. The second mistake is clinging to concepts about emptiness. Some try to define it endlessly. The circle must symbolize this or that. But like the finger pointing to the moon, explanations are not the moon itself. The circle is a mirror. Staring too hard at it blinds us. The third mistake is separating emptiness from daily life. We may think emptiness is a lofty idea for monks in temples, not for ordinary people. Yet the circle appears in every breath, every relationship, every change. To miss this is to miss the heart of practice. The Buddha taught in the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. This is the essence of the circle. A flower is not just itself. It depends on sunlight, soil, water, air. Remove any of these, and the flower cannot exist. It is empty of a separate self, yet full of the whole universe. Zen masters use the circle to reveal non-duality. We usually divide life: success versus failure, good versus bad, self versus other. But the circle has no divisions. It holds all opposites as one. This also ties to impermanence, anicca, because nothing stands alone or fixed, everything changes. To see this clearly is not despair, it is freedom. We suffer when we demand permanence from what is by nature fluid. A young musician fears that losing popularity means losing worth. But when she sees her art as part of a greater flow of creativity, she finds peace in playing. Regardless of fame, the circle holds her rise and her fall equally. A father feels devastated when his children grow up and leave home. He clings to the identity of needed parent. But when he accepts the emptiness of fixed roles, he discovers new joy in friendship, mentoring, and love. In science, atoms once thought solid are now seen as energy fields, empty of fixed boundaries. What Buddhism intuited centuries ago, physics now echoes. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not a void to fear, but a fullness to embrace. The circle does not erase meaning. It reveals that meaning is woven in relationship. When we cling to rigid identities, I am only my job, my body, my success, we suffer. The circle opens us, reminding us we are more than any one point. The empty circle is not a puzzle to solve, but a way to live. Here are some practices to bring its wisdom into daily life. Circle of breath. Imagine each inhale as drawing the circle in, and each exhale as letting it go. Notice how the breath completes itself. Full, empty, and full again. This simple awareness mirrors the rhythm of form and emptiness. Seeing interconnection. Each time you eat, reflect. This meal is not just food. It is the sun, the rain, the farmer, the earth, the truck that carried it. Like the circle, every bite contains the whole universe. Releasing fixed identities. Write down roles you cling to: parent, worker, friend. Then ask, am I only this? The circle shows that we are more than any label. Roles arise and dissolve, but the circle remains whole. Draw an enso. Take a brush or pen and draw a circle in one stroke. Notice the state of your mind in the line. Steady or shaky, open or closed. The drawing is not about art. It is a mirror of your presence in the moment. The empty circle whispers, you are complete yet ungraspable. When we cling to things as permanent, we suffer. When we fear emptiness as void, we despair. But when we see that emptiness is interconnection, that form and void dance together, we awaken. The circle is life itself, birth and death, joy and loss, beginnings and endings, all held in a single sweep of the brush. Nothing missing, nothing extra. Pause and imagine the circle around you. Inside it, place everything in your life. Your joys, your struggles, your hopes, your fears. Notice how the circle holds them all without judgment. Nothing is excluded. Ask yourself, can I accept the wholeness of this circle just as it is? When we live this way, every moment, even difficulty, becomes part of the complete picture. The circle teaches us that emptiness is fullness, and fullness is emptiness. But within this circle of life, choices still shape our path. Which seeds we water matters. The next story is about a wise elder who told his grandson, inside each of us, two wolves fight, one of anger, one of compassion. The one that wins is the one we choose to feed. This is the teaching of the two wolves. One evening, an old Cherokee elder sat with his grandson by the fire. The flames crackled, sparks drifted into the night sky, and the boy's eyes were wide with curiosity. "Grandfather," the boy asked, "why do people sometimes do good things and other times do bad things?" The elder looked into the fire for a long moment, then said, "Inside each of us, there are two wolves. One is angry, jealous, greedy, full of pride and fear. The other is kind, generous, humble, full of peace and love. These two wolves fight inside every heart." The boy frowned, thinking deeply. "Which wolf wins?" he asked. The elder placed his weathered hand gently on the boy's shoulder and replied, "The one you feed." Although this story comes from Native American tradition, it resonates deeply with Buddhist teaching. The two wolves mirror the wholesome and unwholesome states of mind the Buddha described. One wolf represents greed, hatred, and delusion, the three poisons that cloud awareness and cause suffering. The other wolf represents generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, the three antidotes that lead to freedom. The fight between wolves is not distant or abstract. It happens in every thought, every word, every choice. The Buddha taught, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought." The mind is everything. What we think, we become. Feeding the wholesome wolf means practicing mindfulness, compassion, and generosity. Feeding the unwholesome wolf means indulging anger, envy, and greed. Each choice waters one or the other. A colleague receives a promotion. One wolf whispers, "That's unfair. I deserve it more." The other whispers, "Be happy for them. Your time will come." Which wolf you feed shapes your peace. A parent exhausted after work hears their child misbehave. One wolf urges shouting. The other suggests patience and guidance. Each response shapes the child and the parent's own heart. In traffic, someone cuts you off. One wolf burns with rage, wanting revenge. The other breathes, letting it go. That single moment determines whether the drive feels like hell or peace. The wolves are always hungry. Each moment is a meal. We may not control their existence, but we control what we give them. To feed the wolf of compassion is to create heaven in the heart. To feed the wolf of anger is to create hell. The choice is daily, ordinary, yet profoundly transformative. The elder's story seems simple, yet most of us fall into patterns that feed the angry wolf without realizing it. The first mistake is believing anger or greed make us strong. We mistake aggression for confidence, selfishness for success. But these poisons consume us from within. The angry wolf may roar loudly, but it is always hungry, never satisfied. The second mistake is ignoring small choices. We think only big decisions shape our lives, but each tiny act, snapping at a loved one, indulging envy, holding a grudge, feeds the wolf of suffering. Step by step, it grows strong. The third mistake is thinking the wolves are permanent. Many people say, "That's just who I am, angry, jealous, selfish." But Buddhism teaches impermanence, anicca. No wolf is fixed. Every moment is a chance to shift which one we feed. The two wolves reflect the Buddha's teaching on karma, action. Every thought, word, and deed plants a seed. Feed the wolf of anger, and seeds of suffering grow. Feed the wolf of kindness, and seeds of peace flourish. Karma is not fate. It is habit shaped by choice. This story also points to habit energy, vasana. The wolf you fed most in the past will come running more quickly. If you fed anger often, it arrives at the slightest trigger. If you fed compassion, it responds more readily. Practice is about retraining the appetite. Finally, the wolves echo the teaching of the two arrows. The first arrow is pain, inevitable in life. The second arrow is how we respond. Feed anger, and the wound deepens. Feed compassion, and the wound heals. A young man in Los Angeles grows up in a competitive culture. He believes ruthlessness is strength. So he feeds the angry wolf daily, mocking co-workers, chasing status. Years later, his career thrives, but his heart is lonely. A mother in Chicago faces constant stress. Each night she scrolls social media, comparing herself to others. Envy and resentment are meals for the wrong wolf. Her peace weakens, though nothing external has changed. A student in Boston fails an exam. The angry wolf urges self-hatred. You're worthless. But when she instead chooses self-compassion, I can learn, I will improve. The kind wolf grows stronger. We do not control which wolves appear. Both live inside us. But we always control the feeding. Each moment asks, will you give your energy to bitterness or to kindness? To pride or to humility? To greed or to generosity? The wolf you feed not only shapes you, it shapes the world around you. The elder's wisdom is practical. The wolf that wins is the one you feed. How then can we feed the wolf of compassion and peace? 1. Daily seeds of kindness. Each day, choose one small act of generosity. Smile at a stranger, send a kind message, help without expecting return. These little meals strengthen the compassionate wolf. Mindful anger. When rage rises, pause and name it. This is anger. By recognizing it, you stop automatically feeding it. Take 3 breaths and ask, what would the kind wolf do here? 3. Gratitude practice. Each evening, write down 3 things you are thankful for. Gratitude is food for the good wolf, reminding you of abundance rather than lack. Compassion for self. Many feed the angry wolf inwardly, with self-criticism. Instead, when you fail, whisper, I am learning. I am human. This nourishes patience and resilience. Right companionship. Spend time with people who feed their good wolf. Their energy becomes your nourishment too. The Buddha called this kalyanamitta, spiritual friendship. The 2 wolves remind us, heaven and hell, peace and suffering, compassion and hatred. These are not distant realms. They live in us, moment to moment. Every thought, every word, every gesture is food. What you cultivate becomes your character, your destiny, your world. The angry wolf will never disappear completely, but it does not need to dominate. The kind wolf is always waiting for nourishment. To feed it is to choose freedom. Pause right now and ask, which wolf have I been feeding today? If it was the wolf of anger, pride, or envy, don't despair. Each moment is fresh. You can begin feeding the other wolf now, with one kind word, one mindful breath, one act of patience. In time, the wolf of compassion grows strong, and the other grows weak. Your heart becomes a place of peace, not conflict. The elders' teaching about the wolves is not separate from the Buddha's teaching. Both remind us, our inner world shapes our outer life. To live awake is to choose carefully what we nurture. And so, we end this circle of 20 Zen and Buddhist stories, from the empty boat to the 2 wolves. Each tale has been a mirror, pointing us back to the same truth. Peace, compassion, and wisdom are not far away. They are already here, waiting for us to notice, to practice, and to live them. The journey does not end with the stories. It continues in you, in every choice of which wolf to feed, in every ripple of the mind, in every breath of awareness. May you walk forward light and free, carrying the moon in your heart and the sound of silence in your hands. We have walked together through 20 stories, boats and arrows, bamboo and circles, monks and wolves. Each tale was simple, but each held a truth deeper than words. Perhaps you noticed how often the lesson repeated itself in new forms. Peace is already here, but we forget. Wisdom is simple, but we complicate it. Love is available, but we choose anger instead. Over and over the stories whispered, you are already home. The question now is not whether you understood them with your mind, but whether you will carry them in your heart. When you feel restless tomorrow, will you remember the cricket in the temple, teaching you to pause and listen? When you feel weighed down by hardship, will you recall the heavy stone, reminding you that some burdens are stepped around, not carried? When anger rises, will you see the samurai's sword and know that in your hand is the choice between heaven and hell? When doubt whispers, will you feel the wolves within and ask yourself which one you are feeding? The Buddha's wisdom is not in temples far away. It is in the next breath you take, the next choice you make, the next word you speak. If you forget, that is okay. Forgetting is part of the journey. But remember this, the ox was never truly lost. Your peace, your compassion, your clarity, they are grazing quietly, waiting for you to notice. So tonight, before you sleep, place a hand on your heart. Breathe deeply. Whisper, I am here. I am whole. I am enough. May these stories travel with you like gentle companions. May they remind you that storms will pass, that the moon still shines even when the pond is rippled, and that your heart is vast enough to hold both pain and joy. And when you wake tomorrow, may you step into your day not with fear, but with a quiet smile, knowing that within you, a kind wolf is waiting to be fed. Thank you for walking this path with me. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free.